I have. Good evening. This meeting of the Palo Alto Unified School District Board of Education is called to order. Please take your seats. The first item on our agenda is the report of closed session discussion. The board met in closed session from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock this evening, and we took one reportable action to approve a claim, Reyes versus PAUSD, in the amount of $1,758. Excuse me. The second item is the approval of the agenda order. There are two changes that I know about. One of them is to remove item A, the social emotional learning implementation, due to the absence of a couple of staff members. We are going to move that item to our next public meeting. And then item S, regarding teacher housing, we are also going to defer. Are there other changes to the agenda order? Can I have a motion then to adopt the order with the changes that I laid out?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The agenda order is adopted. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Ms. Hendricks.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. In my report tonight, I have the opportunity to do several celebrations. So I'm very excited about this. So the first item is our Jan Parker Substitute Teacher Awards for 2017 to 2018. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the award and then invite Lori Pryor to come up and share our winners for this year. So our substitute teacher workforce is an essential part of our PAUSD family. They assist in maintaining the quality of our instructional programs and providing continuity when our teachers are away from the classrooms. We currently have 365 substitutes or guest teachers and utilize an average of 70 per day working on our campuses, with over 140 substitute teachers on our heaviest days. Often substitutes perform such an excellent job of engaging our students in the learning process that they're sought for the same classroom repeatedly, some booked weeks or more in advance. So Jan Parker was a substitute caller for PAUSD from 1968 to 1986, a time when the only means of substitute placement was for live calls to be personally placed. The district had 2 phone lines and a tape recorder installed into the Parker's den, as they called it, so that Jan could take messages from teachers and start arranging substitutes early each morning, very early. In honor of Jan, her husband John Parker instituted the Jan Parker Substitute Teacher Awards in June 1994. We're grateful to Mr. Parker, who passed away in August 2011, for establishing this special tradition of recognizing and rewarding some of our best substitute teachers, and there are so many. Each year we ask staff to help us in nominating some of our most excellent substitute teachers for this award. This year we are going to honor 2 teachers, and I'm going to ask Lori Pryor to come up first. And I'm going to introduce Lori Pryor because Lori is one of our unsung heroes in the district. So Lori is the person who handles all of the substitute requests and placements on behalf of the district on a daily basis. And I can tell you she starts early, works late, and never lets up until every classroom is filled with a qualified substitute. And Lord, I'd like to start by acknowledging the work you do and giving you a round of applause. And in a stressful role, she does it with a smile and customer service. So Lori, thank you. So Lori, I'm going to ask you to invite our 2 award winners up, and you have some information to share about them.
Thank you. So Terry, one of our most valued substitutes, Mr. Holzmer, this is his 3rd time receiving the award, but I would tell you that he is nominated every single year. Terry has been teaching in our district since February of 2001. He holds a bachelor's degree in communication from San Jose State University before obtaining his multiple subject credential. Fondly known as Mr. Terry, he has worked many long-term roles in our district over the years, and when he is not engaged in a long-term role at our elementary level, he is working almost every day of the year in our elementary campuses. I frequently get asked by teachers or administrative Staff, oh, is Mr. Terry available? And I always have to say, no, I'm sorry, he is working in another assignment because he has been booked in advance. Loved by staff and students alike, he is known for being friendly, highly reliable, timely, flexible, knowledgeable, and intuitive. He is ready with a positive attitude always. Teachers and administrators express a sense of comfort and relief when they know that Mr. Terry will be on deck. Students benefit from his efforts to connect with them. Excited to see him when he returns on subsequent visits. Students even cheer when they hear his name. It is said, and these quotes come from the nominations, "I know my lesson plans will be closely followed and my students will be safe and have fun. He's a jack of all trades. He makes an effort to connect with students. He is a tremendous asset to our district." Thank you, Mr. Terry. Christopher Duff is our secondary level winner. He joined us as a substitute teacher in November of 2016. Chris holds an anthropology BA cum laude from San Francisco State University. He is a certified archaeology technician and a Presidio Volunteer Trail Ambassador. Chris recently traveled a very good portion of the Pacific Crest Trail. He received a record-breaking number of nominations for this award this year. Probably close to 3 times as many as anyone else has ever received in 1 year. So it was a landslide, no question who was going to win this. He is valued by staff and students at both of our secondary campuses, although he also works at our elementary campuses. He did also receive nominations in that category. He's known as an outstanding substitute, super friendly, charismatic, patient, kind, caring, genuine, with a can-do attitude. Some of the quotes from his nominations. This one I love. Chris Duff, at his core, is student-centered. His priority is to make sure that the students are emotionally safe in the classroom. That's big. He takes ownership of the program. There is no gap in learning when Chris is in the room. He is respected by the staff, and he is one heck of a gem. We are lucky to have him as part of our community. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Terry, Mr. Chris, and Lori Pryor. Thank you. And I know that Terry Baldwin, our PAEA president, will agree that these people are incredibly important to the operations of our classrooms. So we thank you. I'd like to offer another celebration. Actually, this is a little bit of a mixture, a little bit of a sadness, but celebration. But this is going to be the last board meeting for Barbara Harris. And I want to spend a few minutes acknowledging and recognizing Barbara's contributions. And I didn't tell her in advance, or she would have found a way to not be here. So Barbara began her career in 1978 as a classroom teacher. She taught in Los Angeles, Atlanta, Oakland, Fremont, and Hayward, teaching grades 2 through 8. During her career, she's held a variety of roles, including program resource teacher, Title I program specialist, been a math coach, middle school assistant principal, elementary manager of curriculum and instruction, educational consultant, and a startup principal for a PK-5 school. We are fortunate to have her join us in 2013 as an assistant principal at JLS Middle School. In 2014, she began as the director of elementary education, and she is now retiring as the chief academic officer, assistant superintendent of elementary education. During her tenure in PAUSD, Ms. Harris has had many initiatives and has overseen the adoption of new curriculum in language arts, social science, and math. An advocate for social emotional learning and equity, Ms. Harris has helped lead the implementation of curriculum and practices that have directly improved student education and the student experience in PAUSD. A major highlight of Ms. Harris's work in PAUSD was bringing Teachers College reading and writing program into the district. Building great rapport with Teachers College, PAUSD currently has 4 lab schools and is highly regarded as a leader in this all-important work. Her impact on PAUSD will be felt for years to come, and we feel her departure already. We thank her for her commitment, her dedication to staff, students, cabinet, leadership, the district. We're sad to see her leave us, and we are wishing her all the best in the next exciting chapter of her life. Ms. Harris, would you please come up? We have a little something for you here. Thank you so much. And finally, it's my great pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce to you formally our incoming superintendent of Palo Alto Unified School District, Dr. Don Austin. He's been with us this week. He's made some comments previously at the reception. Don, I'm sorry I don't have flowers for you, but we had cake, so that should count. He's here with his wife, Paula. We've had a short time to work together in person, some lengthy time by phone. Already am just impressed by his energy, his commitment to education, to students and staff, and want to officially welcome you here to Palo Alto Unified School District and invite you to come up and say a few words. Dr. Austin.
I've watched so many meetings online, it's almost surreal to actually be here in the room. This is fun. Let me start by, again, just thanking the Board of Education. You took the process so seriously, and it's appreciated. It was the first sign of the professionalism that I hope to experience here for a long time to come. And as I said earlier, I won't disappoint you on your decision. I understand fully the importance of the decision that you made. Next, Karen, I want to thank you, not only for the way that we've communicated together already so quickly, but the grace you've given me on asking a lot of questions and just also to acknowledge, and I think on behalf of the entire staff here, how much your work this year is appreciated. And I'm looking forward to being your partner. So thank you. To the team, and by team, these first 2 days, we've met with over 100 people. I have a day left, so if there's anyone I haven't met yet, let me know. But the team here, I can already tell, is optimistic, eager to go, hardworking, professional, smart, all those things that you would hope for coming into a new position. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know and work with each of you. Spent time today with all of our principals as well. We've met the district office staff, and it's been a pleasure. To my wife, Paula, who's here with us today, I can tell the community that you're getting 2 for 1. Paula and I are both excited about not only the professional experience of coming here as the superintendent of schools, but our desire to become a part of the community. To the community as a whole, our outreach efforts will begin as soon as I get back in July. I'd like to thank my own Board of Education for allowing me the time to come up here for these 3 days. We are still in school in Palos Verdes. I'm flying back tomorrow night for graduation Thursday, the first one at 10 in the morning. But we're going to have significant and substantial community outreach efforts as soon as we get back in late June, early July. Finally, I'm most excited about a few things. The potential of this school district, and there aren't many districts that could say you're the #1 ranked school district in the state and there's potential to be better. That's exciting. There's something just really special about that. I'm going to tell you, and I've told the groups already today, we're going to have a commitment to fundamentals. We're going to do the things that need to be done right. And we're gonna together look for efficiencies and places to just really be as solid as we can be as an organization, so that when it comes time for future innovations, we're gonna have such a solid foundation. We're gonna do a great job in those areas. We're gonna align resources, human and fiscal, to the priorities of the school district, and we're gonna do that responsibly and continue to set a high bar for education in the entire state. My parents taught me two things, at least. One is show up on time, and the other is work hard once you're there. We're going to do both of those things. And again, thank you all. Looking forward to getting to know everyone better.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. That concludes my report for tonight.
Ms. Baden-Caswell.
I just want to say two things. First of all, I am thrilled and delighted, Dr. Austin, to have you here tonight and to have you coming on board. It's a pleasure to meet you, Paula. And I want to say, Barbara Harris, thank you for everything you've done. I know that this wasn't agendized, but I just feel like we should say that. So,
But we agree
I don't
with her.
think the
so
Brown Act forbids us
We'll
from
take
thanking
the Brown Act
employees.
violation for that.
yeah, thank you for everything you've done. We will miss you, and thank you.
No, and I want to again welcome Dr. Austin to the district. We look forward to working with you on behalf of students to do great things together. And I think we're all reminded with Ms. Harris and with the substitute teacher awards that a school district is the people who come to work here. And we are really blessed with the quality and commitment and dedication of the people who do that. So thank you. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent calendar. These items are approved in one action without discussion unless a member of the board or a member of the community wishes to speak to one of those items, in which case they are pulled off the consent agenda and placed at the end of the regular agenda. We have a request from the community to address a comment to item M regarding legal services, so we will move that to the end of the regular agenda. Are there other items that, I don't believe that there are other items
Nope.
for public comment. Do board members want to address comments to any of these? Okay, so we need a resolution to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item number M.
I move that we approve the consent calendar with the exception of item M. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So the consent calendar is adopted with the exception of that item. The next item on our agenda is open forum. Open forum is an opportunity for members of the community to address the board on any topic that is not on the agenda. And I'll remind you actually that the SEL item and the teacher housing item have been removed from the agenda. So if you wanted to address those items, open forum is the appropriate place to do that. Otherwise, on the items themselves. And you can make a request to address the board by filling out a card over there, and that's speaker cards. And
Right next to the cake.
that'll get brought up here, and we'll call you to the podium for that. We have two cards for open forum, one Ken Horowitz, and the second Carolyn Benfield. Mr. Horowitz.
Thank you. As you know, I've been coming to your meetings over the last few months, talking about a soda tax. You may have seen the paper today. City soda tax loses its fizz. Unfortunately, last night, we were at the city council meeting, and they basically put off the ballot measure for, excuse me, this November. We're not discouraged. We're going to come back and put it on the ballot. It's kind of sad because the school district was going to be the biggest beneficiary of this soda tax. I don't know if you saw in the paper just the other day, San Francisco Examiner, Mayor Farrell's budget was for $21.1 million in soda tax revenue, of which $3.8 million would help funding for the San Francisco Unified School District, funds with such things as physical activity, food access, and education. In addition, another $1.5 million for school meals, $550,000 for oral health, and $450,000 for water stations. Now, obviously, in Palo Alto is much smaller than San Francisco, but we would get a big chunk of that, the school district. So what I'm asking now is, as we move forward, and particularly the liaison committee, the school and the city council liaison committee, to kind of keep pushing the city council to support this sugar tax and get it passed. Maybe it's 2019 or maybe it's 2020, but it's a win-win for our residents, our children, and this particular school district. So I'll leave those two items with you. Since social and emotional learning is not on the agenda tonight, I just wanted to comment, and if I go over, I'm sorry, I was kind of disappointed last time we met because you were discussing a curriculum change to put on, and now I can't even think of it, a particular item. I think it was on a math kind of item.
Computer science.
Computer science requirement. And it's a good idea to watch the video that the Palo Alto Weekly did this Friday and hear what the students have to say. High school should be fun. And this push for academic grades and taking advanced classes so they can improve their GPA is not what high school should be all about. And I blame the four-year institutions for pushing our kids to get good GPA scores. And I hope you can work with some of the four-year schools around here like San Jose State and Stanford and UCLA and UC Berkeley. The kids at their age do not need this kind of stress. They're going to live a long time. They can learn as life goes on. They don't have to get it all in the 4 years of high school. So I hope that when you do talk about this topic of social and emotional learning, that primarily we need to make our kids happy. That's what it's all about.
Thank you, Mr. Horowitz. We
No,
had a
sorry,
little
I went over.
difficulty
We
with our timer, so we didn't have the signal, but now we're back up to speed.
We're up and running.
Carolyn Benfield.
Hi, I'm
Oh, yeah, something's,
Try the button at the base.
Hello.
Hello. Oh.
Hello.
I'm Carolyn Benfield. I'm the principal secretary at Palo Alto High School, and I've been here in the district for about 20 years. I just have a few brief remarks. One is a welcome, and then a little bit of advice, and a big thank you. So I want to welcome Dr. Austin and his wife to Palo Alto. And the little bit of advice is don't look at Palo Alto online. Sorry, Elena. No. If you must, just remember that that's not, Palo Alto Online isn't Palo Alto. It's Palo Alto Online. And there's a whole wonderful community here that's supportive and loving and great for kids. The other thing I would suggest to you is that you schedule time in to visit the schools, visit the sites. It's a tonic. When things get discouraging, you probably already know this. When things get discouraging, go to an elementary school, come over to the high school, watch the science teachers, whatever. It'll lift your spirits right away and remind you why you're here. And then my thank you is to Karen and Ann and Sharon, who we have a real difficult transition at Pally coming up. And so we've been talking about it a lot and kind of putting the pieces together and trying to stay positive. But Karen and Ann and Sharon have been just so supportive and such a great partner, and especially Sharon has been just a wonderful mentor to Adam. So I want to thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Benfield. I don't believe there are any other comments for open forum. So the next item on our agenda is item B, brief public hearing on the local control accountability plan before we have the staff presentation and discussion. So I will open the public meeting on the local control accountability plan. Hearing no public comment, I will close that public hearing. And the next item on our agenda is item number C, which is the LCAP 2018. Ms. Hendricks.
Thank you. And while the team is getting up here, just wanted to frame this a little bit. So what we'll be sharing with you tonight and asking you to provide thinking and input into is really some of the most impactful work that I've seen done in my time at a cabinet level, which has been about 8 years now. So this is truly a product that's inclusive of a process that worked across departments in the district, constructed through shared thinking and through a systems alignment approach that was quite remarkable, and inclusive of a commitment to opportunities for input, multiple opportunities for input that were thoughtfully gathered. So lifted now into the LCAP, you're going to see our 3 district goals around high-quality teaching and learning, equity and access, and wellness and safety, as well as reflections of our prioritization related to district office operational support. And those are subsets of work brought forward in a comprehensive, aligned, and very dynamic plan that you're going to see presented tonight. So we're bringing to you our best thinking, and we're anxious to capture your insights as we prepare to come back to the board for approval on June 19th. I'd like to introduce Team LCAP in front of us and ask who will be first. Dr. Haxton, thank you.
Thank you. So we keep saying that we should have T-shirts because we should.
Fundraiser, perhaps.
Yes. So this work, as Ms. Hendricks said, has been a team effort this year, and so will be our presentation. It is not going. It's not go. Oh, okay. Maybe. I don't know where I have to put it, but this slide deck, some pieces of it have been shared as a portion of our feedback as we went along at the community meetings, and I think we keep using this quote, but I think it represents where we are taking the LCAP, really with this group who's up there, as well as with all of cabinet and all of director level and some coordinator level staff across the district, and that's something that we hope to continue moving forward, that really all of this work reflects our work as a district, and we all have to work together to do it. We'll just remind everyone a little bit about what is the LCAP, a quick overview of the process that we've taken this year to really reorient and reorganize the LCAP. It's not a lot of substantive changes, but the ones that we've made are important, and we'll share that today. And then, of course, share with you the LCAP as it is drafted currently for the next year. So a reminder that the intent of the LCAP has changed over time as it's evolved in the state, and this is also changed the guidance from the county, which is that instead of just being a compliance document, more and more boards and districts are using this as at least a part of a district strategic planning process, and that's where we've really moved it as well. Our current LCAP, this year's LCAP, has 13 goals. Every goal has annual measurable outcomes attached to it. So the measurable outcomes in the LCAP are at the goal level. We can talk more about that in a bit. And then underneath each goal, there are actions and services. So our current LCAP has 47 actions and services, and every single one of those has a budget item. Every single one of those 47 plus, 47 plus 13 things, we have to write how we've done them and whether all of those things have driven towards our goals as a district. And so while there's a lot of work in there, we all realize that it's not really easy to look at and understand what's in there. And now, of course, it's a 235-page document, so you could argue that it might not be doing that now either. But the county office recommended that we reduce the number of goals in our LCAP. And so with that request, we tried to do that this year. Just an overview of highlights in our LCAP, and I think this really speaks to how it really does touch on every district department in some way. In our current LCAP, we supported first-year implementation of the new math curriculum in elementary and middle schools. We strengthened systems of collaboration and progressed on alignment of courses at the secondary level. We implemented new teacher induction standards. The district equity plan was developed and approved. We expanded the Family Engagement Specialist program. We expanded the AVID program to be across all of our secondary schools. We increased goal setting and progress monitoring in elementary response to intervention, provided targeted support to sites on attendance, and supported the first-year implementation of School Connect SEL program in our high schools. So that list is a big one, and that's just the highlights. So as we went through the LCAP and made this reorganization this year, we just to remind that every goal has an AMO attached to it, a measurable outcome, and every action has a budget item attached to it. So this team started by trying to say, can we take all of what's in the LCAP and reorganize it just to our 3 district focus goals, which is what our sites also develop their SIPSs to, and our WASCs reports in the high schools are also largely aligned to these 3 goals. So it became a constructivist art project where we literally just chopped up the LCAP and we saw where do these 3 things fit, and also could we do it? Would it really work for those to be all of what's in our LCAP and what's in our district strategic plan and in our equity plan? Could it all fit under these 3 goals? And then we took that, so we ended up having 3 goals plus 1 at the recommendation of all of our stakeholder groups, a 4th goal that we call governance, compliance, communication, and relationships. So we really felt that even with those 3 district focus goals, there was this big area of need that we put into this 4th goal. And everyone is very good at writing actions, things to do, but we tried to say, for every action that we write as a team, can we make sure that there's a measurable outcome attached to it? So that's what these Post-its show. The pinks are the actions, and the purple are the measurable outcomes. And you can see that as a district team, we really tried to do that, to say, for every action that we write, how are we going to know that we did it or didn't do it next year when we go to write the annual update? And what are our most important measures of these things at the goal level? So this was an exercise that we took as a team that we hope will really help us next year when we write the annual update. And we also made sure that the measures that we included at the goal level ensured that we met all of the 8 state and local required priority areas. So we can talk about that as well. Also, the dashboard, remember, is new. This is the first year that the LCAP is written with the dashboard data. And we are required to address all of the red and orange indicators on the California dashboard in our LCAP. So these 2 slides just show what our red and oranges are. And of course, you can go online and see that. But that's just to say that every single red and orange we are required to address in our LCAP, and of course, we would want to. Also, the 10, and it's really 8 state and local priority areas, so 10 indicators, 8 priority areas, are also required to be in our LCAP. So those are all drivers of the California dashboard that really are important for our work, and they're also required metrics now.
Good evening. I'm Judy Erdegameda, the Director of Academic Supports, and I really wanted to extend a big thank you to the team. So this has been a solo project for a couple of years, and having a team has been wonderful, and they've done a lot of great work, so thank all of you. So this year, every year the LCAP decides to add a new component, and this year they have aligned the LCAP to the consolidated application, which you just approved on consent calendar, and it's a federal addendum. So we're going to have to complete the consolidated application and then add the federal addendum to it, and to really describe how we're using our Title I dollars and how they're aligned to the LCAP. So that's good news for our district, so we will have plans that match all the way across. The addendum will not be approved by the Santa Clara County Office of Education. It will go to the California Department of Education for review. They have not given a lot of guidance on what kind of information should be on there, but we've been to trainings, and we will be turning that in on June 30th. Stakeholder input was very different this year, and I was really proud. I think I saw a lot of the board members attend. We had a lot of stakeholder input, and we really went over the LCAP dashboard, which I think was a game changer for Palo Alto Unified. We were able to pinpoint where we see performance gaps, and performance gaps are when there's a group that is 1 or 2 levels below the average, and then where our greatest needs were, and the greatest needs are defined as the red and orange levels. So yellow, even though there is a performance gap, is not necessarily a greatest need as defined by the LCAP process. Also, our feedback, we got over 213 responses, and the superintendent must respond to them in writing, and that will be on the website on June 30th. So a lot of the responses included things that we are already doing, so that really spoke to communication, to getting our story out there and our message that we are doing it. We provided this feedback to the cabinet. It does not necessarily mean that what somebody responds to, if it's 1 or 2 people who are responding to, we may not necessarily put it in the LCAP. We have to decide as a team, but we do consider all feedback. The input opportunities, we had community meetings. We presented for the first time to the leadership team in detail and got their input. The DLAC, which is the District English Language Acquisition Committee, CSCA, PEA, and last year, the Santa Clara County Office of Education said that we really didn't do the best job on reaching out to students. So we did reach out to students with the survey, and we sent it to targeted subgroups, to low-income African-American, Latino, Hispanic, foster youth, and McKinney-Vento students, and then other students who didn't fall into a targeted subgroup. And overall, I would say that the students responded that they wanted tutoring and enrichment opportunities for HUR, and low-income students. So even a little break, right? So even the students who were considered high-performing, they said that they wanted enrichment and tutoring opportunities for special education and low-income students. And I really want to highlight that because I think it shows the care of our community, that it's not just about themselves, the students really were thinking of others. So major themes have kind of addressed that. The students really wanted enrichment and tutoring, and a lot of the other stakeholders talked about bullying, healthy relationships, harassment, behavior specialists, campus supervision on the middle schools was a highlight, and communication was a theme throughout. And then compliance is when we added the fourth goal. So we really looked at the stakeholder feedback and then tried to incorporate everything.
Hi, I'm Kelly Bickle. I'm the Professional Learning Director and proud member of Team LCAP this year. So I'm going to tell you about our 2018-19 LCAP, reorganized in the way that Dr. Haxton described. We have 4 goals: high-quality teaching and learning, equity and access, wellness and safety, and the governance, communication, compliance, and relationships. This year, we have 47 actions, and for this year moving forward, we have 37. So we're getting there with narrowing the focus. You can see on the slide the breakdown, 5 actions in high-quality teaching and learning, 15 in equity and access, and that's partly because we've integrated the actions in the equity plan and the special ed work that's been happening this year. So there's a lot of work to do in goal 2, 7 in wellness and safety, and then again, 11 in that last goal that speaks to the interest and need around that last goal as well.
All right, and just a note about the budget, which I think is the most exciting revelation of the year. You'll see that the budget that we're reporting and projecting is much larger than previous LCAPs. One of the changes this year, and we worked very closely with the county on this, was that it was no longer dependent upon the source of the funding that was being used, but they want to know all spending that was being made to meet those goals. What that meant was that we had to pull together every director or team leader, anybody who owned their own budget, and go through with them the new LCAP, the new goals and actions, and find out how much of their money, and most importantly, how much of their personnel time were going to each of those activities. We applied this both to the annual update component for last year, and we have been working on projecting that going forward for next year. So one of the big changes that is occurring entirely behind the scenes is that we've been working very closely with Business Office, and this has implications for the timing of how we budget things and how we talk about money with the people who are actually delivering the services. The really exciting thing about the LCAP is that it is attaching measurable outcomes to funding, and that's really excited if you're into measuring effectiveness and accountability. Oh, I forgot to click.
So I'm going to spend a little bit of time telling you about the content, what's in each of these goals. It is, as Dr. Haxton mentioned, 235 pages right now. So I'll give you some of the highlights. Under Goal 1, there's really 2 big buckets. One around standards implementation. At elementary, that is around a lot of our new curriculum that we have. We will have a science adoption coming up, so there will be a need to focus on NGSS there as well. And then, of course, on professional learning. And I'm sorry, back to the first one, with secondary, to continue to focus on alignment around practice rooted in the standards and around common approaches to assessment, grading, all of that. And then professional learning, obviously to support that work around standards, and then also to provide the differentiated support that teachers need. Induction for our new teachers, support for teachers who might need a little extra support, and coaching available for all teachers. Under Goal 2, we have several actions related to RTI and progress monitoring. as Dr. Argumedo mentioned, supports for HUR, SED, and SWD students. That's historically underrepresented, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and students with disabilities. That came out as a request from students, and we also know from the special ed evaluation that came out that we have some work to do there as well. Under this goal, we also have parent engagement, support for English learners, and our diversity in hiring. So goal 3, in our current LCAP, we have really one action related to wellness and safety. And this year, that's been transformed from one action under a goal into a whole goal in and of itself, because we know that it's so important. And this goal speaks to physical and mental health, attendance, the work around SEL, and then the education related to healthy relationships, boundaries, comprehensive sexual education that has really been an area of focus this year to make sure that we continue that. And of course, bullying prevention and intervention. And finally, in goal 4, we have staff compliance, really making sure that we are abiding by the OCR resolution agreement to the best that we can, not to the best that we can, that we are abiding by the agreement that we made around communications and relationships and transparency. And then some of these highly qualified teachers, instructional materials, and facilities are required metrics under the LCAP. They are, of course, important, but they might seem a little out of place in this goal, but they're things that we're required to have in there. So that's just a brief walk through the high level of the 37 actions that are in the LCAP.
Of the LCAP, so it's going to come back on June 19th. In past years, it's went on consent. We are going to submit the LCAP and the SF Federal Addendum to the Santa Clara County Office of Education by June 30th, and also to the CDE. And then final county approval of the LCAP is actually in August or September. So we send it to June 30th for review, and then we do have to make edits. So the current LCAP that is here for the public and at your desk, though it's a draft, we've already made changes. So we have until June 30th. We send it to the county, I would say like weekly, and then they send us edits. Some of the things we have to put in there, and I'll just give an example. Expulsions, suspensions, we can't take it out. We have to report what we have. They have to go. So they have about 13 measures that we have to report. And so sometimes we don't have all of that data because school just ended. And so we're pending a lot of data. And so now, any questions? And thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't believe we have any cards for public comment, is that right? Then let's take board comment and questions. As we heard from staff, the LCAP plan will come to us for action on the next board meeting. So if there are, particularly obviously if there are changes, then this is an opportunity to flag those. Okay, shall we start with you, Ms. Godfrey?
Sure. Well, Team LCAP, nice to see you all here. Nice to see you still standing. I know years ago when we used to talk about the LCAP, it was a complete bolt on to the other things that we actually did, right? We used our strategic plan, we used annual goals, we used other ways to kind of drive what we were doing in the district. And I can't remember who used to do it, but when it got dropped off in Dr. Argumedo's lap, it was like a heroic effort for one person to try and put it together and make it make sense with all the other things we did. And it seemed, I'm sorry, cruel to do it to you. I'm so happy, you may know that. So I'm so happy to see a team, particularly a team as diverse as you all are and the kinds of things you do in your normal life, your normal professional life, really bring to this table a lot of richness to get this work done. So as I look at the summary, and maybe not all of the 237 pages yet, I really appreciate that you took the time to tear it down, figure it out, and build it in a way that it can be our document versus just this bolt-on thing that's on the side that we have to get approved occasionally. So all our work is in one place, so we can understand which goals it supports and why it supports and how we support each other. The opportunity for richer community input was also ripe with opportunities, so I'm happy that you found a way to make that more robust and a part of the process that really fed the goals that we want to pursue. And I appreciate that you disregarded that the work that we had done in the past really is just a sunk cost. The way that it was done before was done that way. And, it's tempting to try and just do it the same way each time. And, you still get an answer and you can still submit it, but this is really much richer than it was. And lastly, the last bucket of things, I don't know if you called it a goal or not, around compliance and communications and relationships, we sometimes don't want that in our beautiful pictures and graphics of the things that we do as a team. But, we have 1,500 people who work here. We have more than 12,000 students. It is really the glue that keeps us together and makes these things work. And so I appreciate that you acknowledge how important getting that right is, and that it's not a trivial part of the work we do, because it really does take a village to get kids through our 13 years here and 14 years here and off into the world. So I appreciate that. I don't have specific questions. I'm happy to have you bring this back on consent. I'm sure when we get through this, there may be more questions to ask, but for now, I'm very happy with the work. I'm very happy to see that you've made a team out of it and that we're not torturing Dr. Argumeda with this anymore.
By herself.
By herself. I mean, we might be torturing her, but at least she has friends.
Thank you. I was about to promote you to, I was about to graduate, a battlefield promotion to PhD. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, President Dahl. Yeah, I echo Ms. Godfrey's comments. This is a very big step in the right direction, and I know it was a huge effort, especially with Judy out for part of the period, and I think a lot of people really stepping up to take on something that I think my personal view is of vital importance to kind of our doing what we set out to do. So I'm, I don't think most people here remember not that long ago. I mean, 2 years ago, we had, I campaigned on this, so I know, 38 different priorities, goals, focus goals, state goals, and 128 individual measures and metrics about how we were going to do on that goal, which, as I used to say in my stump speech, was the same as having no goals at all. And so I think this is a huge step in the right direction to take our various plans and bring them under one coherent umbrella and really, create order out of the chaos that we had before. I think there's more to be done, and I'm sure you guys all agree. I see heads nodding. One of the things I hope that we do next year or in the future is distill and build this into a clear set of goals and measures that can be looked at over several years, that all of us, the board, the senior staff, teachers, students, the entire community can look at and understand what it is we are trying to do and whether we are actually succeeding at doing it. I think one of the hardest things in what we do is actually understanding whether our intentions are connecting to actions and whether our actions are connecting to our intended results, and then circling back to change what we do to do better. That's a very hard problem in a complicated organization like ours and in a field like education, where I think it's very hard to distill, unlike the private sector where you can often distill it down to profit. Here it's much more difficult. So I think this is a huge step in the right direction. I'm very grateful and appreciative, and I look forward to the team continuing to build on this so that we can have, I hope, a plan based on this that we can all sign up for and share, and to guide our actions going forward. So thank you. I don't have any comments or questions, but thank you very much.
Ms. Bain-Caswell.
This has been a very impressive group effort. What I liked about it most was not just you coming together and working together, but also that you took a look differently and tried to use the categories that we've been using as our goals as the categories that we looked at this plan. This will make it much easier when Dr. Austin comes in and helps us look at what we should do about the overall strategic plan, which is sort of aged at this point. And so hopefully we'll have some plan that includes this. So we'll be looking at the full budget, not just 28 million of it. It's actually a pretty big number, but that's certainly nowhere near what our whole budget is. I wonder, Dr. Argumento, if you at this point, after going through this process, what do you think our biggest challenge is to be successful with the goals you have going forward? The big wad of stuff goals.
Well, what I think is our next step is really putting this plan in front of the administrators, and we have a new crew of administrators coming in, and really having them, this plan, guide the sites. I think before it's been a district plan, it's just been something of compliance, but really putting this forward to the administrators. There is an LCAP SIPSA template, and both officers of academic and secondary said that they will use that as the new template. So to me, that is like the biggest, I don't know if it's a challenge, but getting everybody to really understand the LCAP and how to use it to guide instruction and access for all the students targeted in this plan.
So make it not just a book, but a living,
Yes.
breathing thing that we're using. Okay, I think that's a good challenge for us. One thing that I liked that was in here was some language that was specific to one part of the plan, to LCAP Goal 2, but I think to have a goal for inclusive classroom culture and to make sure that we're addressing the processes, procedures, and cultural conditions that may serve as barriers to high achievement of underserved students. I think that that is really important. And we spend so much time talking about the reducing the achievement gap, but so much of why we have a gap is about cultural barriers that we have and misunderstandings. And this is something in our melting pot of a community that we really have to pay attention to if we're going to have success for all of our students, not just some of our students. So I appreciate that that's, I don't know who put that in, but I really appreciate that. And a couple of things that were sort of down in the dirt, but I just wanted to bring up, I really, really feel like I'd like to see more emphasis and support around college and career readiness and our AVID program. And I'd like to see that in here a little bit more. I know I sent you some questions earlier, and it's like, is this high enough goals for us? Meet 2 times a year with your college counselor? Are we happy with how many kids we have in our AVID program and what we're doing there? I'd like to see that a little bit more in here. I'd also like to see some more verbiage about what our goals are for the all-day kinder program for the kids that fall into these categories in that kinder program. My understanding was we were going to do some special things for the kids in this category by doing a full-day program. And if we're not doing it, if we're doing it, great, let's tell them. If we're not doing it yet, let's say what we would like to have happen. And then I do think that our kids that are in 504 programs need to be looked at, for example, when we're talking about mandated health screenings for kids with IEPs, I think our 504 kids need that too, because there's a lot of sliding back and forth between those 2 programs. And my last thing is, so we moved out of Title I with a couple of our schools, is that correct?
Yes, with the new ESSA, there have been some new regulations, and before we were able to fund Barron Park through general funds to what they were owed for Title I. However, they are not allowing us to do that anymore, so we had to rank the schools. We always pick the top 4, so Barron Park went in, and that means that Addison went out of Title I funds, but that we don't get that notification till February 10th when the consolidated
Okay,
application.
So this isn't as good news as I thought it was, but,
Yes.
okay. Or good news at all.
It's
What it is.
It's what it is.
Okay.
We still, though, want to continue to support Addison with other funds. So my office has been working with Amanda Boyce, and we are looking to see how we can support them through academic supports.
Thanks very much for this report and your work on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Brienza?
Thank you, Team LCAP. I don't have a whole lot to add. I think they said it very well. But I do think that when LCAP first came to us, at least from, I think, a lot of the community's perspective, it was sort of this box we had to check. We did it, and yes, a lot of it fell on you there. But I don't think we either understood it or appreciated its significance. I think probably the board at the time did, but I think the greater community was still trying to understand really what it was. And I think the work you have done on it this year has really made it so clear both what it is meant to do and how we as a district can benefit from this process. And I thank you for all of that. It is, again, cohesive, coherent. You took it all together. It's all, everything's connected to each of our programs, our initiatives, our efforts, and I appreciate that. I love seeing that there are 15 actions for equity and access. That was nice to know that even though we feel from up here that it's something we keep talking about and thinking about and putting resources towards, that really plays out in when we're looking at what our main goals are in our 43 actions. Is it 43? 47? 37, okay. I didn't want to go up to either. So that was nice to see. I've got some individual questions for staff, but I can ask them later. Thank you very much.
We have one card from a member of the community that I'll take before I comment. Lisa Tesvazki. Is that right? Oh my God.
She's so happy.
Once in a blue moon.
Hello.
Thank you. Go
It's
ahead.
my first board meeting, so I'm a little nervous.
Welcome.
But thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for your report for the LCAP. And I was curious about when you mentioned about parent involvement. And I would just offer, just wondering, I really liked how you did a survey for the students, wondering about their perspective, but I would also wonder about what that looks like. For example, how the school staff greets them, because that often can deter a parent of historically underrepresented communities, or it can encourage them to be involved in the school climate. So I would offer perhaps consider doing a survey for how the school climate is once you implement some of your strategies, such as what Todd was saying, so you can see what it's looking like on the day-to-day for both the students and the parents, so that you can achieve what you're seeking to achieve. I also would offer a really fantastic, what Melissa was speaking about with the achievement gap. Dr. Bruce Perry, he's a fantastic thought leader in the field of child development and schools, really looking at the equity gap. And he actually was on 60 Minutes with Oprah if you wanted to watch a brief interview, but he has a neurosequential model, which is a really quick way for each teacher to do a quick 30 seconds on each student to see how they can adjust their teaching. But long story short, so he says that when kids feel safe, much what you were talking about, Melissa, about connecting culturally, then that's when you see their true cognitive capabilities. And so the role of the teachers in the classroom is quite powerful as far as how they're engaging with the students. And so those two substitutes that got the awards, I really was touched at them creating safety for the students. So I would just offer that to you. And in fact, where Dr. Austin is from, there's a Long Beach High School and many schools across the nation that use Dr. Perry's work through the Child Trauma Academy. And they've seen huge change in equity gap and suspensions and just the punitive style of disciplining children. And they're a great resource. They'll email you back, they'll connect you with professionals. So I just wanted to offer that to you because I really support your quest in changing that area of this school district. So thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for this work. That I think the district struggled with the LCAP understanding how to fit it into an overall planning process and thinking of it as a compliance document for a while before moving it to center stage. And I think it's going to be important and exciting to see it being used as a mechanism for reporting and accountability over the next year. And we really need to hold ourselves to the standard of doing that with this document and developing the metrics so that we can actually make that happen. I look forward to that. I had a couple of specific questions about items. One of them was on LCAP goal number 2 around the percentage of parents reporting receiving progress on IEP goals, moving that from at each report card period, which the goal is to move it from 45% to 60%. Is there a reason that we shouldn't expect full compliance?
No, and as Dr. Argumedo said, we've already made changes to it's a living document at this point. We're making changes as we get feedback, and we'll continue to do that as we get your feedback from the county. So that specific item has already been changed to 100%.
Okay, and I apologize if there was a document that I didn't see.
No,
I didn't have a chance.
no,
Okay. The other is, I wanted to follow up on an item that we discussed I guess it's on the same item around percentage of students graduating. We had a discussion earlier in the year about understanding our A to G graduation rates in particular. I see that is one of the items here. We didn't come back to that question. And I would like to pick that up again before the end of the year, which means I think next meeting. Are we prepared to have a report on understanding the issues around A to G reporting?
Yes, Mr. Dauber. A couple of things. First of all of the information that is used in the creation of the dashboards for reporting college and career readiness and A to G requirements, those are all located in DataQuest through our CalPADS reporting. Now, I remember when you brought this issue up earlier in the year, I do have a presentation that was ready to go. It got tabled for a while, but if you do agendize it, we are ready to report on some of the questions that were raised in the
I would certainly appreciate that. I'm looking to my colleagues. I think the issue was understanding what was driving the results that we were seeing.
Yeah.
And I think there was some confusing numbers that we would just like more information on.
Yeah,
Or at least be able to ask questions about.
yeah. Let's plan on doing that. Thank you.
Very good.
Terrific. Thanks very much. Are there other comments or questions that board members would like to make? Thank you very much for this report. We obviously really appreciate it and are looking forward to working with this. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item number D, renaming resolution. Let me just say a word about the kind of process context in which this is coming to the board. First, let me find the item, sorry. 5D. This item comes to the board through a process in which community members can place items on the board agenda pursuant to the Education Code if those items are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. The agenda setting committee met and considered this request and determined that this item is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. So it's agendized for discussion. There is no staff recommendation because it doesn't come from staff. But we do have a number of speakers on the topic, including some of the community members who brought this resolution and then some others. Excuse me? There are more than 10. There are more. So what does that mean for us?
It means it goes to 2 minutes each.
2 minutes each? Okay. Yeah. So given that this resolution comes from the community, I suggest that we start by hearing the community comment, and then we will open it up for board discussion. And so there are more than 10 cards. So under the board's rules, that means that we limit public comment to 2 minutes each. So I'm going to call the folks in order, 3 at a time, so that you know that you're coming, and then you can approach the podium. First is Satomi Okazaki, then Michelle Higgins, then Aimi Okano. Ms. Okazaki.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for your time. I want to start out by saying that this is not a Japanese-American issue. This is an issue for all of us. It's everyone's issue. I'm here tonight as a concerned parent. A bit of background. When the issue of renaming the middle schools arose, I did not pay much attention because I did not have strong feelings about whether they should be renamed and what they should be called. When I first heard that there were people opposing the name Fred Yamamoto, I looked into why they were opposing the name. It seemed that the main reason was that there was an unrelated Imperial Japanese admiral who coincidentally shared the name, the last name, as the American Fred Yamamoto. I tried to put myself into their shoes. If this name made people so unhappy and pained, we should acknowledge their feelings. I decided to attend the March 27th board meeting at which the board voted on the new names. What got me to become involved in this issue is what I heard from those opposing the name Yamamoto. In this boardroom, I heard comments like, "The name Yamamoto brings back horrifying memories and pain. Would you name a Hitler middle school or a Bin Laden middle school? The name Yamamoto stands for wars, sorrow and horror associated with the war criminal Yamamoto." My 6th grader was handed a flyer on the Jordan campus that stated something similar. Now let's try an exercise in sympathy. Substitute your own surname in these comments and see how you feel. How does it feel to be told that your name is horrifying? There are 5 families with the name Yamamoto in our school district. Their children go to school with all of our children. These comments are very personal and direct attacks on these families. PAUSD has made a commitment to inclusion and to providing a safe environment for all students. These incidents during the renaming happened despite PAUSD's best intentions. I ask you to create the committee proposed in our resolution. It will serve to take our students and the PAUSD community in general to the next steps so that we can take this diverse community to learn and heal and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Okazaki. Next is Michelle Higgins, Aimi Okano, and Bello Nakano. Ms. Higgins.
Hi. First up, I want to say this is not a Japanese-American issue. This is everyone's issue. The past few months have, for me, represented a sad and painful episode for our school district and wider community. That pain is felt most personally and intensely by American families of Japanese heritage who have good reason to worry about the climate now exists in our schools for students of Japanese descent. But it is also felt by many others in the community who feel great empathy for our Japanese American friends and recognise that the reasoning and strategies that were used to convince our school board to never seriously consider Fred Yamamoto as a viable name for a Palo Alto middle school set both a dangerous example for our students and a dangerous precedent going forward, especially for immigrant groups who are already feeling the welcome mat being pulled out from under them nationally. When the national conversation around race and immigration has taken such a dangerous turn, we cannot afford as a community to be neutral when we see the same strands, similar thinking being given credence in our own community. In these times, we cannot afford to be neutral for the sake of keeping some mythical peace. We do not have peace when teachers are reporting seeing explicit anti-Japanese racism being exhibited in their classrooms. We do not have peace when our district has seen numerous UCPs filed over the past 18 months related to race, national origin, and religion. We do not have peace when our middle school bathrooms have been graffitied with words and symbols that are so abhorrent, I will not repeat them here tonight. What we must do is stand up, acknowledge harm, and move on to positive, proactive actions. That is what this resolution tries to do, however imperfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ayumi Okano, Bello Nakano, and Sally Horna.
Good evening. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address all of you on this particular issue. Because all of us have been thinking about this for so long, I know that there's some redundancy on our comments that we prepared for independently. I just want to also reiterate and say again that this is not a Japanese-American issue. This is a purely American issue. What I'm about to describe happens in many places across the country, and Palo Alto is no exception. My name is Amy Okano, and I am a parent of 3 Palo Alto High School graduates and currently have 3 grandchildren in Palo Alto schools. I have been in support of and against many issues in my lifetime, many involving education. I know what it is like to want to make a difference in getting my point across and discussing the use of different tactics to be most effective. I've been there and done that, and I would venture to guess that many who are here tonight also have been there and done that. I state a truism that all of us as parents want what is best for our kids and want them to understand our life experience. We tell them our story as we experienced life. We teach our kids to view a name negatively as we ourselves do because we want our kids to understand our pain. Therefore, in the course of the school name change, when we learned that the name of Fred Yamamoto as a real possible school name, that is untenable to us. We consider tactics to make our point against the name, not thinking of the potential unintended consequences or harm. We can become so myopic in wanting a particular outcome that we can get emotionally charged up to think up the most dramatic tactic. I've been there too with other issues. However, in this case, preventing a middle school to be renamed after the heroic American and Pali graduate Fred Yamamoto because his surname conflates with the unrelated same surname. Is that the end or?
That is the end, yes, but you can email your comments to the board and we will have the opportunity to read all of them.
Well, basically, I just wanted to say that all of us can make a difference by being kind and understanding towards the people who have endured the pain of the tactics that were used. So we each have a responsibility, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Please forward them to the board at PAUSD.org, and I want to encourage everyone to do that on all issues because it ensures that we have the opportunity to read them in full and to reflect on them. Bello Nakano, and then Sally Horna, and Lars Johnson.
Yeah, I'm Bud Nakano, and this Fred Yamamoto thing came up, and I've seen it on a post, and I didn't want to get a chance to apply for it here. And I didn't get a chance to talk to it before. But I doubt if anybody on this board knows what the McCarran Act is. The McCarran Act was passed in 1952. Until that time, only blacks and whites could be naturalized citizens. Okay, so what happened was when Fred Yamamoto applied to go to war or to serve for the United States, he was declined, not because he was because he was Japanese American. Because they banned Japanese Americans from fighting in World War II until they needed help. In latter part of 1943, they allowed Japanese Americans to serve. And it was a segregated service at that time. He served in the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. You probably heard of them. They've been very successful. They fought in 7 major campaigns. No other unit of that size or larger fought in more than 3. Also, in that time, a lot of people don't know about this, and the reason is, it's called military intelligence. The MIS, the military intelligence, many Japanese Americans served in the MIS in the Pacific Theater. And they worked as interpreters and counterintelligence as well. MacArthur, when he retired, said they saved us at the minimum of 2 years of wartime in the Pacific. So when that happens, these things kind of happen. I don't know about those other people that were protesting about the name Yamamoto in Southeast Asia, but they ought to think about it, that they couldn't even become citizens until guys like Yamamoto died for this country.
Sir, let me ask you to conclude your remarks and to send the rest of them to the board. Thank you. You're out of time, sorry.
Okay.
Your time has expired. Thank you for your comments, and please send them to board@pausd.org. Sally Horna, Lars Johnson, and Gail Nakano.
Good evening, board members. My name is Sally Horna, and I'm a legal fellow with the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, also known as CARE. We are the largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization in the country dedicated to protecting the civil liberties of American Muslims. In addition to protecting our clients from FBI visits and keeping up to date with the Muslim ban, CARE conducts Know Your Rights presentations, bystander intervention trainings, and anti-school bullying presentations. I come to you today because we are concerned about the hostility that has emerged against the Japanese American community in Palo Alto as a result of the school renaming process. The flyers passed out to children on school grounds, as well as the anti-Japanese comments on the online petition, create an environment that is not conducive to our students' ability to learn and to thrive in a harassment-free environment. Bullying is not limited to peer-to-peer contact. It also includes conduct by administration. In our 2017 school bullying report, only 32% of students stated that their bullying issues were resolved by an adult after reporting it. That is an incredibly low number. I am here on behalf of CARE to support the demand by the parents regarding the anti-racism and outreach efforts in your schools and communities as a way to end the bullying on the basis of a student's race, religion, and national origin. We also support the parents' demands to form a district standing committee designed to create space for dialogue on pertinent issues surrounding the intersectionality of diversity, inclusion, and community programming for the benefit of the students. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lars Johnson, Gail Nakano, and Kim Shimazaki.
Good evening, dear board members. Lars Johnson. I'm a Palo Alto Unified School District parent. I was involved in the renaming and very saddened by the ending when a new name was chosen and we had the issues around the name of Fred Yamamoto. It was a very clear outpouring of some underlying racism in this community. I think that was recognized and regretted by many, and I do fully support the resolution, and I encourage the district to find a way to take this opportunity to institutionalize a process yet to be defined, like the committee that was recommended, to have the various stakeholders in our school district come together. I think it's very important. The issue is that it's not isolated to just the resentment to a Japanese sounding name, which was unfounded. That was even admitted by those that were against the name. But I think the racism we still have in the school district hits us at all levels and at all different groups. It's also subconscious bias that still is present in our classrooms and in our schools. And this may be a good opportunity for us to keep an eye on that. So that's why I support the recommendation of the resolution and the standing committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gail Nakano, Kim Shimazaki, and Kathy Jordan.
I'm here to read a message from Alan. I'm here to read a message from Alan and Mary Seed, who could not be here today. Dear PAUSD board members, we support fully the resolution before you tonight. We believe your affirmative support of the resolution, particularly the action clause of empowering a committee to develop and implement an educational program to bring healing and reunification of kindred spirit within our community, is vital. Thank you, Alan and Mary Seed, ACI co-founders, which is Asian Americans for Community Involvement.
Thank you. Kim Shimazaki, Kathy Jordan, and Suzanne Skinner.
Thank you. This is not a Japanese-American issue. This is everyone's issue. In response to the anti-Yamamoto flyers passed out at Jordan and Terman on March 25th, the principals of Terman and Jordan and the interim superintendent said in their letter, "It is our hope that throughout the school renaming process, our community can use this moment in time to model respect, tolerance, empathy, and kindness to all parties." So counter to those values, the tactics and reasoning shown through the campaign against the name Yamamoto, they were in direct conflict with those. One of the central assertions made by the group against Yamamoto was that his horrifying and hurtful name could be separated from Fred Yamamoto, the person. However, the name of a person is inextricably enmeshed in a person's identity, and so, therefore, Yamamoto was a part of Fred, the person. And so, if he were to have been alive today, of course he's not, but he would have himself been attacked. So were the 5 families and 11 children with the name Yamamoto and PAUSD. You, the board, are the leaders of our school district. Please take action against the lack of empathy shown in the anti-Yamamoto campaign and consider to adopt this resolution we put before you. Do this for every child in our school district. Every child deserves that. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Jordan, Suzanne Skinner, Elisa Hamai.
Yes, the renaming of the middle schools was initiated, I believe, to be sensitive to all members of our community due to the association with eugenics movement some of the middle schools were named after. Sadly, what was initiated as an effort to be more sensitive now seems to have devolved into hard feelings about the results of that renaming. And in this attempted resolution, also sadly seems to be revisiting that discussion. Of course, it is appropriate to acknowledge that the U.S. incarceration of the Japanese residents during World War II was traumatic, completely inappropriate, illegal, very likely based on fear, prejudice, misunderstanding, anger, among other things. This sordid history in our country needs to be appreciated, apology given for it, needs to be acknowledged, and the history should be disseminated so that it may never be repeated. At the same time, we all have a right to be here. It goes for everyone of Asian descent, as well as for those white, brown, black, of different religions, different national origins, those who are recent immigrants, as well as those whose family came earlier. I would suggest that we not now compound a wound that has been opened in the community by passing a resolution which contains language that some would consider inflammatory, and which resolution could be construed as directed towards certain specific members of our community. Sadly, we have a president calling Mexican immigrants racists and animals, openly stating that he seeks to prevent those identified as belonging to one specific religious group. He's trying to prevent them from coming into our country. I wonder if we could consider a different course of action to honor Fred Yamamoto's legacy in a different way, as no doubt he had to look past experiences of real and damaging expressions of prejudice, exhibitions of misunderstanding and anger, and move past those experiences to consider devoting his life to the United States, to which he gave his service. We just learned from the gentleman about the McCarran Act. I think we can all be grateful to Fred Yamamoto.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Renaming Suzanne Skinner, Elisa Hamai, and Dana Tom.
Hi, my name is Susanna Skinner, and I am a PAUSD parent. I'm a first-generation Korean American. I will be reading in an email on behalf of Mia Frances Yamamoto, a prominent criminal defense and civil rights attorney based in Los Angeles. I'll read an excerpt. I am a Vietnam veteran, 4th Infantry Division, Republic of Vietnam, 1967 through 68, and I am privileged to advocate for the honor of the late Fred Yamamoto and every other American of Japanese descent. Recognizing an American patriot who fought and died for our country is the right thing to do. Objecting to someone's last name is an objection to someone's race. It is racism, pure and simple. Yamamoto is one of the most common names in Japan. Not surprising, it is also one of the most common names held by Americans of Japanese descent. If some group objected to a school named after someone with the last name of Lee because it was the last name of a famous trader named Robert E. Lee, who led a failed rebellion against the country to preserve slavery, they would be objecting to the most common last name on earth. It wouldn't make any more sense than objecting to the late Fred Yamamoto because he shared the last name of some admiral from Japan. Thank you.
Thank you. Elisa Hamai, Dana Tom, and Jeanette Arakawa.
Good evening. I'm a Palo Alto High School graduate. To quote a portion of the Palo Alto Unified School District's website, Palo Alto Unified Schools District is located in the heart of Silicon Valley and is well known for its rich tradition of educational excellence. One of the strengths of the district comes from the multicultural diversity of its students. Although students come from different cultural backgrounds, they share an excitement about learning and tend to be high achievers who wish to excel. My question is, do you want to be well known for a school district for its rich tradition of educational excellence and multicultural diversity, or do you want to be well known for being exclusive and racist? I would like the Palo Alto Unified School District to make a stand on the Fred Yamamoto issue in condemning the behavior by the parents who passed out the flyers to children and disseminating the propaganda, the negative and false information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dana Tom, Jeanette Arakawa, Sarah Whittam. Welcome back, Mr. Tom.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your service to our students and our school community. This resolution is about much more than renaming our schools. It is about distinguishing between two unrelated individuals. It is about not generalizing from one individual to all who share that same surname, which is one short step from generalizing to an entire race. It is about being clear with and educating our students and school community that how we discuss issues that touch on race impact all of us. It is about equal access to education. Online, I've read about students openly denigrating Japanese students in classrooms. There could be cases of Title VI hostile environments in our schools. Now, I appreciate that the resolution notes the damaging impact of the school renaming process on families that shared the surname Yamamoto and those of Japanese heritage. However, the effects are much broader than that. Many who are not Japanese American are also dismayed and disappointed. We need more than those directly affected to stand up and speak up, because this was what was missing during World War II, when over 100,000 innocent Japanese Americans were incarcerated. Understanding what led to that incarceration motivated many Japanese Americans to defend American Muslims after 9/11, when some attacked their loyalty and Americanness. I urge you to support this resolution. It clearly states our district's values of inclusion and mutual respect. It acknowledges the hurt that resulted from the school renaming process. And it creates a committee to help our school community move forward constructively. We depend on you to ensure equal educational access to all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeanette Arakawa, Sarah Whittam, and Steve Cray.
On February 19, 1942, President F.D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which resulted in the relocation and internment of over 120,000 civilians of Japanese ancestry on grounds of national security. In 1980, the Commission on War Relocation and Internment of Civilians was established by an act of Congress and directed to review, among other things, the facts and circumstances surrounding Executive Order 9066. And the Commission concluded the United States government wrongfully rationalized the internment on grounds of national security and military necessity, and the decisions which followed from it, detention, ending detention, and ending exclusion, were not driven by analysis of military conditions. The Commission determined that the broad historical causes were race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. The relocation and internment experience constitutes a unique historical experience and legal challenge, which give us cause to be alert to circumstances which mimic it so that it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Woodham and Steve Cray.
Hi, Sarah Woodham, parent of 3. Over the course of the 3-year process of this renaming effort, we recognize the need to use this as a teaching moment to educate around California history and recognize the issues that we have, even today, around the role that race, culture, class plays in how our children fare in this district socially, emotionally, and academically. So the need for this resolution, frankly, speaks to dormant issues that we actually didn't really anticipate, and also won't go away by ignoring it. And so what I wanted to actually just speak to today was similar to renaming. This resolution isn't the be-all and end-all of it all. And I believe that, and I want to emphasize that, as we go forward with, hopefully with recommendations from this resolution and with the renaming of our schools, that we use this as a teaching process and that we directly and explicitly incorporate in this curriculum as it's being, changed now or improved now, to incorporate the impacts of race, class, culture, and history of our various demographic groups, and basically as we all are here as Americans, as part of that curriculum, and it should be explicit. We need to deconstruct what is a very complex but very real and persistent issues in our school district in order to build a common understanding with a school culture of respect for everyone. And as Lisa, who is not here before, spoke before, who is not here now, said before, and I really appreciated what she said, a climate where all students feel equally integrated is a basic necessity for our children to participate fully, feel included, and to thrive and achieve at their maximum potential.
Thank you. Steve Cray.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is Steve Cray. I'm a resident of the state of California and a frequent client of many Palo Alto businesses. As a citizen of this country, it pains me greatly to learn that the fear and distrust of our fellow citizens continues to diminish our sense of community even to this day. I urge you to adopt this resolution with all parts intact as a statement of evidence that we are not the same people who incarcerate those of whom we are afraid or simply have not yet bothered to understand. Stand with me, please, in support of this resolution and in the building of trust, respect, and understanding between all peoples. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment, unless there are other cards. So just to be clear about sort of the procedure around this, as I said, this resolution was brought forth by members of the community exercising their right to place an item on the board agenda if it's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. The board can take action or not on this item. It can adopt a resolution similar to this one or not. If the board wants to take action, some board member will have to move this resolution or whatever action that board member supports. We also have to decide, in addition to whether to take action, when to take that action. This is agendized for discussion, so under our 2-meeting rule, typically we would not take action this evening. But because the item isn't brought forward by staff or as part of our regular process, we also have to decide whether to agendize it for action at our next meeting, since it won't automatically appear there. So that really is the question, is where would you like to go from here on this? And so I'm trying to outline for you, kind of where we are in terms of process. So why don't we have a round of comment? Mr. Brienza?
Thank you. I remember to start the timer for myself. I'm so grateful to members of the community for keeping this on the front burner and bringing this to us. I don't agree that it's unfortunate that we're bringing this up again. I think that these issues exist and have existed for a long time in our community. And I think that this year, the district and the city have done some good work in starting to look at issues of equity and inclusion. Mr. Wheeler had a speaker series on equity and had several events this year in this very room where many community members came out. Recently, the Human Relations Commission worked with AACI to have a speaker come in and do a viewing of the Chinese Exclusion Act documentary. So there's work that we have been doing, and there's more work that needs to be done. And I am grateful that this resolution has been brought to us because I think that we're looking at both issues on a grand scale and individual issues, and both are important, and we need to deal with both. And so there are individuals in our community that were hurt and alienated and felt hostility during this process. And as a community, we acknowledged even that night that there is work to be done. And so I'm grateful that they brought this resolution before us. As for, I'm interested in, so colleagues, I am interested in us taking a vote on this resolution, not tonight. I'm interested in discussing it tonight, and I will move that we bring it back for a vote, perhaps at the next meeting. I guess agenda setting has to figure that out. But I have a couple of thoughts about it. One, I'm interested in changing the name of the resolution, because although this was brought to us today because of the renaming issue, actually, it was brought to us because of the naming issue. The renaming issue was last year, the naming issue was this year. But I think it only speaks to a larger issue with our community. And I do think that the whereas statements that are in the document do address specifically the incidents that occurred during the naming process. But I think that our interest in moving forward is broader than just that. That is a vital part of it, but there's more to it. So I think we would benefit, and it would better reflect what we're trying to do if we consider other names. So I can put some forward, or we can just talk about them as this conversation continues. The other thing I wanted to note to my colleagues is that when I read this, it made me think of our standing LGBTQ committee, which I think is the best example I can think of a standing committee that I have had the privilege of being on that committee for several years now. And I am so impressed with the work that committee has done in many different ways, including advocacy work, educative work, sort of educating ourselves, talking about what sort of education the district needs, the teachers need. We've worked with the facilities committee when they were building new buildings and making sure there were gender neutral bathrooms. We have brought in speakers. We have partnered with other organizations. And that's kind of how I see this committee. As I said, that work, the district has already been doing that work to some extent in the work that the MATD into the equity committee brought up, and the events that have occurred there. But I think we can just be aware of how expansive we have to be with it. I think we were thinking of it in terms of our HUR students, and that we have a lot more work to do there. But I think we would all benefit from broadening that somewhat. One of the nice things about the LGBTQ committee is that anyone who's interested in serving on it serves on it. If you're interested in showing up, you show up. Now, granted, that's not a productive committee if there's 50 people that walk in the room. But I am interested in us sort of reaching far and wide to our community and getting lots of representation and lots of perspectives, and hopefully get to a place where it's a standing committee that meets on a regular basis. And if people are interested in coming and weighing in and raising concerns or coming with ideas, that would be welcome. And I think partnering with the Human Relations Commission and other organizations that already exist and have been doing this work for a really long time. We also brought in the Facing History and Ourselves came in this year too. That's another great one. So my time is up, but I am interested in supporting this and am interested to hear what my colleagues have to say about it.
So in terms of process again, what I heard was a motion to bring this back on the meeting of the 19th.
Yes.
With a new name.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes,
But
that's my motion.
Do you have a name that you want to?
I mean, one of the ones that I put out there was a Community Relations Committee, but that's just, an idea.
And
the resolution would be a Community Relations resolution.
And so your motion would bring back the text of this resolution with a different name, is that
Yes.
right? Okay, so is there a second for Mr. Branz's motion? I'll second the motion so that we can discuss it.
Thank you.
But in terms of process, it's available for amendment. It's also obviously available for voting against at the end of it. But we will take a vote before the end of this item about how to proceed based on that motion. Does that make sense to everyone?
Well, did you just move for just bringing it back for a vote?
Should we
or for
separate
both
those?
things?
Yeah, maybe we should.
I believe
separate
what I heard was bringing it back for action at the meeting of the 19th, and also changing the name of the resolution to Community Relations Committee. Is that the question you were asking me?
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's the question I was asking.
Yeah.
I'd like to amend that to just changing the name of the resolution.
Okay.
And we can figure out what the name
I'll
is later.
second that amendment. But I have some changes to, see, this is hard to be doing this right now. I'm actually taking that back. I think we need to go around and talk.
Okay, we can.
Yeah.
Great. I'll leave it out there right now because that's the.
We can discuss.
Record what it is.
I have it noted down, and obviously we can leave it on as the motion that's in front of us, and then we can decide how to take action on it at the end. I have one more community comment on this. Should we hold this until we go around?
Yeah, let's finish our go-around.
Okay,
maybe,
let's
and
do
then
that.
Is that okay?
Ms. Godfrey?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the effort it took to get organized and bring this forward to us. I also think the renaming name of a resolution is probably not appropriate, but we'll figure out some name for it. I do want to say, when I think back over the last few years and going through the renaming process, a few really good things came out of that. One was that we don't have middle schools named after prominent eugenicists anymore. Another is that we have eugenic studies at middle school, which I think is probably unique in the state, maybe unique anywhere. And the third is that we learned about some outstanding Palo Altans that I don't know that I would have encountered in any other way. And I hate to see us lose those three really shining stars of the process in what ended up being something that I think we sort of tripped over, that I don't think the committee itself was expecting, and I don't think we were necessarily expecting. So, unintended consequence is that it has forced us to revisit our composition of committees and go back to the basics and understand what diversity is. And not only is it race and ethnicity, but gender and zip code and, parent of level of school-aged kids versus elementary school kids versus high school kids. So I think out of the process that was very painful, some very tangible results that I really appreciate and admire the team for. This became bigger than a bread box in a way that was uncomfortable and hard to watch. I happen to have been thousands of miles away when a lot of this unfolded. And so even from there, I could feel it through my fingertips on my laptop. So I support us taking a stand and saying that this is not who we are and this is not who we want to be. He was a wonderful person. He did right by us. Oh my God, what is wrong with me? Sorry. The one thing I would say is, from a completely logistical and pragmatic viewpoint, the composition of what a committee would do and how to do it, I think needs some revision. If we do something that is a little bit of a bolt-on of what we normally do, it won't get done well. We have examples in the district of other things that we do. So Ms. DiBrianza noted the LGBTQ committee, which I sat on for several years when I was first on the board. We have the example of Project Safety Net, which we do in conjunction with the city itself. We have other committees. We have one called Student Wellness Committee, which used to be Health Council, used to be the Safe and Welcoming Schools. It addresses some of this sort of thing. After the 2016 presidential election, some of you may have noticed an uptick in ugliness. We definitely noticed in the district an uptick in ugliness. And that ugliness at that time was very much directed at immigrants or kids who happen to be brown or who look like maybe their parents weren't born here. So I think we have work to do around these issues. The way this resolution lays out what that particular work is, I think needs some revision. So I would be happy to vote on this at either our next board meeting or maybe if we're doing a board retreat sometime in June as well. I'm not quite sure what else we have on the calendar. I'd be happy to do that. But the thing that I would like to do is not only name it something other than renaming resolution, but revisit how this work might get done, what it might include, and how it might address our kids' access to their education, which is at the core of what we do, but also find a way to address how our adults treat each other. Because that, while that is not in the core of what we do, it certainly affects how our kids learn in the classroom. So please excuse the tears. That's what I have to say for now. I'm not going to offer any motions at this moment.
Mr. Collins.
Thank you. I appreciate my colleagues' thoughtful comments, and I appreciate the many community members who came out to raise this issue. I look at it in the context, I look at this in the context of resolutions generally and committees generally. I guess let me explain my views on both. I'm not a big fan of resolutions of sentiment from this board. In general, I think because they generally have no impact. So I'm not enthusiastic about resolutions that express a sentiment that don't have impact because I don't particularly view that as a good use of the board's time, and I think it actually misleads the community that we're doing something when we're not doing something. So to the extent that the resolution is a sentiment, it becomes just a sentiment, then I'm not enthusiastic. I'm also, I'm hesitant, you know, I think as my colleagues know, one of my one thing I try to focus on is for us to do less. I think one of our failure points is that we try to do too much and that we expand our scope beyond our grasp, our reach exceeds our grasp, as I think the saying goes, and that we try to do things, we undertake things that we have very good intentions and limited follow-through. And so I'm hesitant to form a standing committee, a permanent body, to undertake something without kind of thinking about it in the context of all the things that we're trying to succeed with. I understand the importance of it. I agree with it, but creating standing bodies is a big deal for me. I mean, that's work for staff. That's ongoing work for the people involved. And again, it implies that the district will do things. I wonder if this fits under the umbrella of the equity coordinator, which was a position created 2 years ago as a result of the Minority Achievement and Talent Development Group. It sounds like it might. I think that would be worthy of consideration. So I'm open to hearing, I'm open to taking action on this, but I would like to see us think about how this fits into existing processes and structures, because I don't want to burden staff with basically more work, another entity, without, a clear sense, without understanding of whether there are other ways that we could do it that would be more efficient and streamlined.
Does the superintendent want to take a moment to express an opinion about, what you would do next?
Yes, thank you. So, like you, we're anxious to continue and to expand efforts towards respect, tolerance, and inclusion for everyone. Many people here use the word everyone. And we are anxious to continue with that as well and pursue that. Cabinet has had a chance to review the resolution initially, and we have some thoughts about bringing it back for further discussion, reviewing it against Board Bylaw 9130, other pertinent board policies and ARs to look at structures of committees, take a look at existing committee work, committees that are functioning and how those are modeled. Also have a desire to speak with our equity coordinator. We haven't had a chance to do so yet about what elements of the work from that office are already initiated that would lend itself to progress towards this. So I think we have great desire to take a look at existing work and talk about, if we're going to expand on the work, how can we structure that for success and for commitment to the work. I think with a couple of weeks to come back on the 19th, Cabinet could have further chance to review this and take a look at its scope and work and bring back some more specific recommendations about how we might be able to structure this on behalf of the district. But we're anxious to continue the conversation about it and come back to the board.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Did you have further comments, Mr. Collins? Ms. Baden-Caswell?
I think the last 18 months in this district have been quite eye-opening for me and probably for many people. We all living here in our happy little bubble. Everybody, it's Lake Wobegon, all the kids are above average. We all love each other. And then there've been a series of things that aren't that. And for me, the first thing was about a year ago when there was anti-Semitic graffiti on many signs in town. And one of our council members went around town with wet wipes and tried to clean it off as a way to make it disappear. I was pretty upset by that. And I went and talked to our then mayor, who is Jewish, and said, you have to make a statement that this is not okay, that we are not a community that accepts racism. And he was uncomfortable making a statement, but he finally did. A few months ago, our equity coordinator had a get-together in this very room with Black parents and some students from across the district. The room was full. I came to this and I was surprised. I had never seen so many Black families in one room in this district. And I come from New York, and there are a lot of Black families where I grew up, but not here. And I walked away appalled because we started out with talking in small groups about what was going on in our lives in the district, and there are horrible stories. The woman next to me told me her 7th grader had no friends, and she was told by her friend, by other kids in her class that it was because she was Black. They didn't want to spend time with her. The panel discussion that happened afterwards was one example after another of things I never, ever believed went on here. Things that were really blatant and things that were sort of not blatant. A young lady said, I don't want to be that angry Black girl. And why does everybody touch my hair all the time? And I'm thinking to myself, who's touching whose hair? And then I left that really feeling terrible. I went to the PTA council meeting and I talked to the PTA council leaders about this. And then this renaming discussion happened. And what this just tells me is we've got problems that we need to address, and they're not specific to Fred Yamamoto. That was very unfortunate, and I think Fred Yamamoto is a hero that should be celebrated. But what I would like to see is us talk about this in a real way. This is not about Fred Yamamoto. This is about how do we get people to respect each other, all the people in our community? And how do we make sure that what's going on in the classroom is respectful and not racist? And also, people understand what is racist and what's not. Because I think that's a real issue. If you're feeling it all the time and you feel like you can't say it, you don't want to be that black girl, you don't want to be that LGBTQ kid, you don't want to be that whatever. That's not good either. So I would like to see a different name, a resolution that talks about respect and that we won't tolerate racism or discrimination of any type in our district. I'm not sure we need to talk about Fred Yamamoto specifically, but I do think we need to have an action plan, and I would like to see our superintendent come back, and this is why I don't want to say the 19th, because I don't know how much time it's going to take to come up with something. But what would make a difference? Is it a committee? Is it working with the Human Relations Commission in the city because they work with adults? And then what do we do in the classroom to make sure that this doesn't happen? And if we have something that's working really well, like if the LGBTQ committee's working really well, I'd hate to have this siloed from that. I'd like to bring all this together. So my recommendation is that we let staff bring this back to us with what they believe they can do. I've seen us try to bolt on, as Ms. Godfrey said, bolt on things and tell our staff and teachers what to do, and that usually doesn't work as well as them coming to us with what they think is, if we give a goal, and the goal is to work on intolerance and discrimination and racism in our school district and community, what do they think we need to do that? And I will tell you, I'm so proud of our community for coming out because they're willing to help us work on this. And so I hope they'll be included in the recommendation that you bring forward. And that would be my motion, but that's too long a motion, so.
Well, let's finish commenting and then let's try to craft what action we want to take or what direction we want to take. Let me take the public comment card that I received and then I'll make my comments. That's Rosemary McGuire.
We moved the mic, we moved it to the
We're
side.
up here, yeah. We've switched everything around.
She's come to this side a lot of times.
Yeah. We just did it a few weeks ago.
I need to apologize for being late. And I questioned whether I should even come to this meeting.
We're glad you did. You have 2 minutes. We've given 2 minutes.
What I want to say is this. I'm appalled at what happened, but I expect that to happen in this school district. I have lived here for 44 years. My husband and I and our 5 children all went to Palo Alto schools. Racism here is like the ocean. We live in it. We live in racism like fish live in the ocean. If there's any committee, I don't want them to be meeting in private. I think the committee has to be transparent. We are indeed a community that accepts racism. It's sad to say that, but we need to start speaking the truth. When you, the lady in the middle there, in the black, sat and listened to the black kids talk about what it was like to be in this school, some of them said, I wouldn't want my children to come to these schools. I mean, it was a terrible situation. It still is. I would not want my children, very honestly, unless there is some intervention, ongoing intervention, that monitors and helps all these teachers. Because I would not want my children or any children to be taught by, and I'm going to be very specific here. If I were Japanese, I would not want my children being taught by Chinese teachers. It seems, I mean, it was so bad. So I just want to say, you have a job to do. Do not shirk. And it's okay to be uncomfortable.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire.
Thank you.
Thank you to community members for bringing forth this resolution. We clearly have a set of problems. One of them is we have some specific wounds that were suffered by families in the district, Japanese American families in the district, and particularly families with the last name Yamamoto, that we need to address because the prime mission of the district is to ensure that every student can go to school and receive a public education free of discrimination. And I think that if students and families in the district are experiencing barriers to that, then we need to address those. And so I think that it's important that I take Mr. Collins' point that sentiment is not itself action, but I think that expressing clearly the board's and the district's perspective on that will be helpful. And I take that in part because I've heard from community members who say that that will be helpful. It's disturbing when we hear, as we just did, a community member make a reference to not wanting to have their child taught by a person of a specific race because of the history of how we have discussed these issues in the community. So that is a problem. And I think I take Ms. Baton-Caswell's point that the right thing to do is to face it head on. So I certainly support an effort, which I think is well aligned with our efforts around equity to address that issue. So I will look forward to hearing from the superintendent about that. We have a broad commitment to a public education free of discrimination that drives our equity work and that can also drive this work. So I think that's useful. I think that, and I've given this feedback to the community members who brought this forth, that there are some aspects of the resolution that I think risk being potentially divisive and don't necessarily support the goal of addressing in a positive way the district's commitments with respect to inclusiveness and racism. So I would probably want to revisit some of the language in here, although I'm by and large very comfortable with the language. So in terms of action, I think it's appropriate to have this come back at the meeting of the 19th. If staff feels that they can provide meaningful feedback about what would be good next steps, which I think I heard the superintendent say. I'm comfortable with changing the name of the resolution. You know, we can do that now, we can do that later. We can have, I suggest that rather than have sort of a full discussion of all of this now, that we hold that till the next time that we consider this, because we'll have a fuller view of the action that we want to take. I would move to amend Mr. Branza's resolution by striking the reference to changing the name and including, which would leave the direction to place it on the agenda for the 19th for further discussion and possible action.
I wonder if the superintendent feels that the 19th gives her enough time. I'd like to do this right.
Mm-hmm. Yes, me too.
Really?
Ms. Hendricks?
We would like to do it right as well. We will not be able to bring back anything equivalent to a strategic plan or a really definite plan on this. I believe that we can bring forward some further conversation about potential next steps. And I think that there are some next steps that are probably going to be more seamless to implement, and we can identify those around some existing work. So I would feel comfortable coming back with a conversation point that includes some recommendations that we're developing to start thinking towards the next school year. I think there's some, for me personally, there's some urgency around returning to this conversation, and we'd like to return to it in a manner as fully as we can.
So there's your answer. You can take that into account when you're deciding how to vote. So I'm, the amendment that I made was to strike the naming part and to take that up.
Strike meaning
It mean-
change the
To
name.
not deal with it now.
In other words, to not deal with it now.
To not deal with the name now.
To not try to formulate a name now, but to defer that until we have a better understanding about what we're actually going to take action on.
Yeah, you're just stripping down the motion to just bringing it back to.
Yes.
Bringing it back with recommendations from the superintendent.
So a positive vote on this amendment would leave the motion simply being a direction to bring it back on the 19th, and then we can discuss that and
And the it is
the it is the
resolution.
the resolution, yes.
So,
An accompanying plan.
Right.
yeah, 1 second, please.
And
So,
please,
oh, sorry, please go ahead.
add that recommendations will really include future thinking as opposed to a specific plan, actionable plan. So to clarify.
Yeah, so might I amend your, do we have a motion on the table?
The motion on the table is to remove the naming. Why don't we deal with that?
Yeah.
And then we can, so I think I
I'll
heard a
second
second.
that we remove the name for now. Remove the change of that we
already
remove the
seconded it.
motion to change the name.
Do we
Did you
even
second
need
it?
to
already
make
seconded
this into a,
I think it's
vote?
useful, yeah, I think it's useful.
Just
since
to
we're taking
separate them out.
action, to be clear.
okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I didn't really understand. Aye.
So Mr. Brands' motion is now in front of us, and it includes only placing this resolution on the agenda for the 19th.
Okay, so can I offer an amendment to that resolution, which is that in addition, that we direct staff to basically do what Ms. Hendricks proposed to do, which is to consider how they would propose addressing the issues raised in the resolution and discussed this evening.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion?
We have another comment card.
It doesn't say what it's for, is it?
It's for this.
Okay.
So I'll take this after we finish this amendment, but before we vote on the main motion, is that, unless it's directly relevant to the amendment and you'd like, okay. So the amendment that Mr. Collins made was to direct staff to do what Ms. Hendricks said that she was going to do.
Yeah,
And I seconded it.
in addition to,
In addition to bring it back.
And just to clarify, Ms. Hendricks, does the 19th give you enough time or not?
It gives us time for cabinet to review the resolution and the language of the resolution and bring forward some further thinking about items that are included in it for future thinking.
Great.
Okay.
Any further discussion on that amendment? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's take the comment card then, so that.
And after the comment, I have another suggestion that I just would
Okay.
like to share.
so just to make clear where we are, we now have the original motion on the table as amended.
As amended.
Got it.
Right.
Thank you. Can't tell the players without a scorecard.
Judy Mine?
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. So I'm a registered nurse. I've been in quality for working with problem solving at our facility. So we have learned, I mean, right now it seems like you're flummoxed on how to begin. And so I'm just going to recommend something that's effective at our hospital is that you include the people that were affected with this problem, that they will bring a lot to the table about recommendations. And I appreciate your administrative staff because you know your process, you know what is required for the school district, but you also need to listen to the people that were harmed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a further, because we haven't addressed this at all, and,
You want to offer an amendment to the motion? Is that what you're
oh,
doing?
no, we have
or-
to vote on the motion first, then I.
No,
something-
no, actually,
okay.
you should, yeah, we're done when we vote on the motion, so you should
Okay.
feel free to go ahead and.
I really feel strongly that we need to publicly recognize our heroes. And it's our 125th anniversary this next year. And I would like Fred Yamamoto to be one of the heroes that is recognized. I say one of them because we have other heroes that we haven't been recognizing either. At a minimum, I'd like to see the war hero plaques at Pali, the bushes cleaned off from them and those plaques brought somewhere where they're more forward. I think we have an opportunity for a lot of our heroes, and I'd like some recommendation, I guess, also from staff that we figure that we have a plan for how we can recognize Fred Yamamoto and some other heroes that we should be recognizing.
And we can talk more too about the Fred Yamamoto Scholarship Fund, which has been established.
Yeah, I feel like we need to do something public that's in people's faces all the time. The scholarship is wonderful, but I don't hear about the scholarships all the time. They're sort of hidden.
So I don't want to overburden staff with two things that seem a little bit distinct from each other. So maybe this is something that would be a good topic for our board retreat, which Ms. Godfrey mentioned, which is to discuss the general issue of commemoration and celebration.
I
Does
think that
make
would be
sense?
fabulous.
Okay. And in terms of that, well, we can talk in board operations about the board retreat, actually.
Yeah,
Ms.
I don't
Godfrey?
even know when it is.
I don't know when it is either.
Okay.
The mythical board retreat.
It's not mythical, it just isn't scheduled yet.
Schedule. So my finger was up because I felt like I heard some trepidation from you about the current language. And right, this is our resolution, and so it really should be our language. And so I'm curious if you want to make edits, if you want to come back next time with some, like you, it sounded like from you there was.
Yeah, I'd like to, rather than addressing the language of the resolution now, I'd rather just defer all of that until our next meeting.
Okay, so is it worthwhile to have some subset of us sort of work on it so that it's more in our voice since it's our resolution?
I think it's worth, here's what I suggest, is that board members who want to, I think it'd be difficult because it's difficult to give direction to that group in a way that is going to make that sort of an exercise that has board authorization, but board members are always enabled to meet in groups of two, obviously under the Brown Act, to revisit, to draft language around the resolution if they want to. And I guess I suggest that as an alternative to that. Does that make sense? Or?
Should we do that and share our input with the superintendent? It's always very tough to do wordsmithing and writing on the dais. And so if we were each to come in groups of two at the next meeting and try to glue it together, I'm afraid that would be a mess.
Well, I hesitate to involve the superintendent in a process of taking input from board members and then crafting some
Yeah, I kind of feel
resultant.
like this is you, right? You're board president. I mean,
What's
I hate
that?
to give you more work, but I feel like this is you as board president because it's our voice, it's our resolution. I appreciate the community members who crafted something for us to start with, but in the end, it has to be our voice. And Ms. Hendricks, while she can tell us what's possible in the staff to respond to what we'd like, but I think this part of it, we can do it on the dais, but I think it'll be tough.
I don't think we should do it on dais. Go ahead.
I agree with Ms. Godfrey. I think I would be very comfortable delegating this to two members to undertake a drafting process. I think that would move. I think it would move us further faster than independent efforts in pairs that we don't.
Okay.
That are invisible to each other because we can't even talk.
I suggest that
So I just think it would be
Mr. Brianza and I work between the two of us and with the superintendent on
Okay, well, let's,
language.
Can we ask that you review our discussion before you write?
Sure. The one that we're having now?
Just had,
Yes.
because, yeah.
Yes.
And I'll add to it too, the staff may have some recommendations related to language that we can share with you as well as we have a chance to review it.
Okay. Sounds good.
Are you okay with that, Ms. DeBranza? We just sort of nominated you to do that? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we have a resolution that places this on the agenda for the 19th and that directs staff to come back with some thinking and suggestions on next steps. Is there further discussion? So that has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we will revisit this on the 19th.
Taking a break.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll return with the next item. Board members, and if you belong in the dais, please find your way back to it. And if you are here to watch the board meeting, please take your seat. If you would like to have a conversation instead, please take it outside of the boardroom so that we can continue the meeting. This includes future superintendents.
They know it's good for them.
Please, this meeting is back in session, so if you're having a conversation, please either stop having it or take it outside, your choice. The next item on our agenda is item E, which is a public hearing regarding several resolutions in reference to the budget. This is item 5E. I'm opening that public hearing. Hearing no public comment, the public hearing is closed. And the next item is item F, which is a discussion item regarding the proposed budget for 2018-19 and several related resolutions. Ms. Hendricks?
Thank you. This item is for discussion this evening. We'll be bringing it back on the June 19th board meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Mack.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks.
Your mic's not working.
This is the district's budget development and financial reporting calendar for the 18-19 and the 19-20 budgets. The title there should read 18-19 and 19-20 budget. So tonight we're presenting the proposed budget for the 18-19 budget year. So tonight we'll look at estimated actuals for the current year because that forms the basis for next year's budget. We'll look at assumptions for the proposed budget for next year. We'll look at the multi-year projection for the next 5 years, as well as provide a summary of the district's financial outlook. So for the current year, the latest estimate for the current year's actuals is an income budget of $237.5 million, expenditure budget of $239.4 million, resulting in a deficit of $1.9 million. We're projecting the unrestricted undesignated fund balance to be zero at the end of the year. For next year, the picture is a lot better. We're projecting $246 million in revenue, $244.2 million in expenditures, yielding a surplus of $1.8 million. So the main reason that we're having a surplus next year is next year we're getting state one-time grants of $4 million. We're projecting unrestricted undesignated fund balance to be at $2.4 million at the end of next year. The breakdown of the revenue budget is very similar to past years. We have about 81% of the revenue coming from property taxes and parcel taxes, less than 11% from state and federal sources, with another 8% coming from local sources, which include lease revenues from PI and other revenues. We always like to show this series of graphs just to show. So for the first graph, this is the property tax growth for the districts. So what this chart or this graph illustrates is the cyclical nature of the property tax revenue. And you can see a cycle with high property tax growth followed by a cycle of very low property tax growth. And so this revenue source mimics the economic trend. The last 5 bars there reflects our projection, our assumptions for the next 5 years. And you can see our assumptions remain very conservative at 2.8% growth in the next 5 years. The next 2 graphs illustrates the points that enrollment growth dilutes the per student revenue growth. So in terms of expenditure budget, this is very typical for a school district. It's very heavy in personnel. For our next year's budget, we have almost 88% in personnel expenses and remaining 12% in other expenses. So I want to say that 88% is slightly higher than 2 years ago, and the main reason is the increasing employee pension costs. So what is not included in this proposed budget are the budget additions and reductions. So the board has had 3 study sessions so far, and this Thursday, the board will continue to discuss the proposed budget additions and reductions for next year. And so we expect the board to approve these items on Thursday, and then any actions taken at the Thursday meeting, we will update the budget for board adoption on the 19th. The next 2 slides, we highlight some of the major assumptions in the 18-19 proposed budgets. The details are on page 5 to page 7 in the report. So very quickly running through the assumptions. Property tax growth, including budget, is 3.7%. I mentioned there's a one-time discretionary grant from the state in the amount of about $4 million. The revenue budget includes 3% increase for all the contracted leases, a 2% escalator to partial tax revenue, and then PI revenue is budgeted at $5.75 million, which is $250,000 more than the current year. On the expenditure side, the personnel budget includes projected step and column costs. We also have 10 additional teachers budgeted for growth and class size mitigation. The budget also includes any projected pension costs increases. On the non-personnel budgets, we have included all known increases, such as in utilities and non-public school tuitions. So this report includes a 5-year projection. So these are the assumptions used in the multi-year projection. And as I mentioned earlier, we're very conservative in property tax growth assumption. We use 2.8% in the next 5 years. In terms of enrollment growth, we're using the latest 2018 moderate enrollment projection, which requires a total of 20 growth teachers over the next 5 years throughout the district. We have included a 1% salary raise in the last 3 years of the projection. And also, this year and next year, we have 6 teachers budgeted to mitigate large class sizes at the secondary schools. So based on these assumptions, we're projecting a 3.7 budget shortfall next year in 1920, and then in the out years, very small deficit in the range of $325,000 to $478,000. So again, property tax revenue is, assumption is very conservative in the model. On Tuesday, we'll also look at a couple more scenarios that are a little bit more optimistic. And with those scenarios, the budget deficit in 1920 will be reduced.
You mean Thursday, right?
On
Ms. Mack?
Thursday.
Yeah.
Right. So in summary, on the positive side, the economic outlook for next year remains positive. And when we look at the real estate market, for the first 5 months in 2018, the activities remain very strong. And also we have very strong community support, and funding from PI and PTA remain very steady. On the negative side, we're seeing an enrollment bubble passing through our high schools until 2020, and that's when we expect to have growth at the elementary schools. We need to start planning for the next recession. So we've been talking about this for quite some time, that we're in the longest economic recovery. And so the next recession will hit sometime soon. Also, we have also been talking about increased pension costs, and the costs will continue to increase for at least a couple more years before the increase kind of tapered down a little. So, but the increased pension, or at least a known increase in pension costs, are included in our model. So in terms of timeline and next steps, this Thursday morning we'll have a budget study session, and the board is expected to approve any budget augmentation and reductions for 2018-19. And we'll present the proposed budget to the board for adoption on the 19th. Then in July, the governor will sign the state budget. In August, we'll receive property tax projection from the county, and which will take the information and revise the budget in September. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mack. So as Ms. Mack said, we're going to be discussing the budget on Thursday morning at the special session that we're having on that topic. So that's our opportunity probably to get into some of the details that you mentioned around augmentations and reductions. Let's see if we can do a quick round. I'm not actually sure who's teed up for this. Is it Ms. Baton-Caswell?
Yeah, I'm going to save most of my questions and comments for Thursday, but I do have just one question in your summary, that the enrollment bubble passing through the high school is a budget pressure. I'm not sure I understand that, because those kids are already in the middle schools for us, right? Or
Right.
are we expecting some addition?
So we're expecting high school enrollment to continue to grow until 2020. And then in 2020, then according to the latest projection, we're seeing elementary schools to pick up enrollment growth again. So the
but-
pressure is we will have enrollment growth over the next 5 years. But again, we have included the required number of growth teachers in our projection.
But the enrollment bubble that you're talking about is the middle schoolers we already have, or is it a different group?
So the bubble is happening at the high schools last year, this year, and next year.
But they're coming from the middle schools, or they're coming
Yes.
from somewhere
They're
else?
coming from the middle school.
Okay, so we've already provided teachers for those kids. Okay. that is my only question. I'll save my rest of my questions for Thursday.
Mr. Brianza,
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Godfrey, Mr. Collins.
No questions, only a comment. I think one area that the city is ahead of us that we should work to catch up on, and unfortunately I don't think we'll be able to catch up this year, is in thinking about and accounting for our pension liabilities. And as I mentioned at a prior meeting, the city is taking a $4 or $5 million cut out of its next year's budget to reflect pension liabilities that they do not think are properly reflected on their balance sheet and and are not reflected in the discount rate for CalPERS, which I think also applies to CalSTRS. So I don't think this is an item that we'll be able to address this year. I think we should be mindful of it. The city, if we believe what the City Finance Committee sentiment seems to be, there are unfunded liabilities lurking in our balance sheet that we should be figuring out how to fund. And they believe it enough that they're actively seeking a $5 million cut in a budget about the same size as ours, which would be extremely painful for us. So we ought to be mindful of that, even as we get good news that there may be bad news. There may be a monster under the bed. So.
Yeah, I think that would be I heard the same thing because we heard it together at the City School Liaison Committee. And I think it would be a very good idea for us to get some staff thinking on that question about whether we need to reflect unfunded liabilities and what we should do about it. I don't have any further comments or questions. Thank you for this item, and we'll obviously have a much more detailed conversation on Thursday morning. Let's move then to item G, which is a public hearing on the consideration and possible adoption of a resolution regarding school facility fees and an adoption of a CEQA notice of exemption. So we'll hold a brief public hearing on that topic before we consider an item related to that. So I am hereby opening that public hearing. Hearing no public comment, I am closing that public hearing. Next item is item 5H, which is the resolution on this topic. This actually, if I recall correctly, we had considered for consent, but since it required the public hearing that we just had, we didn't put it on consent. But I don't think we anticipated much in the way of discussion. Ms. Hendricks?
Thank you. So this is Ms. Mack's item is brought back for action tonight. We welcome any questions regarding this.
Board members, any questions?
I move we adopt the resolution 2017-18.15.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution is adopted.
Thank you.
Next item is item number I regarding school bond election. Ms. Hendricks?
Thank you. Mr. Golton and team are coming to the podium. Dr. Golton, I'm sorry. Bob.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. This has taken us 10 months, and a baby only takes 9 months, but it's harder to do a baby than this. But the fact especially because we have a great team. Our team includes Dave Olson of PFM, our financial advisor, Charles Heath, our advisor related to the bond, and Tom Hodges, who you know, who has done this project list, which is going to be an element in the district's master plan. We started on August 1st last year with a meeting, and we realized we had a big task to do, and the team did it. We've had a lot of meetings. We had board meetings on February 13th, 27th, April 24th, May 7th, and now this meeting on June 5th and June 19th. We had a poll a poll that was conducted at the end of April and had very satisfactory results, and results that indicated that were positive as far as the potential for success of this program. People ask me, they even asked me tonight, so do we really need this bond? And the answer is that our students need it. Our students need it. Our facilities, we started with this 2008 Strong Schools Bond, and the need was totaled up to over $700 million, and the decision was to do half and to then bring to the community another bond issue in about 10 years, which is actually what's happened, and allow the community to judge how this program had performed and what were the results. And I think that the results are incredibly positive. But we're not done. We're not done. And if we think about our campuses, we've done some elementary schools, we haven't done others. The multipurpose buildings, which are kind of the center, the community hub for our elementary schools, they haven't been touched in 40 or 50 years. And there have been, I understand, some technological advancements since 40 years ago. And so, at any rate, we're not done, and so we want to keep on going. Incidentally, in addition to this team, the board members have contributed a great deal. The community members have contributed a great deal, and I want to shout out for two of our board members who are on the property subcommittee, who've had their own set of 4 or 5 meetings to hammer out the details of this, and which we're presenting to you tonight. So with that, I want to highlight this resolution. So here's the resolution ordering a school bond election. A very important part of this whole project is, in fact, if you page over to page A1, that Exhibit 1, the full text of the bond proposition. And this will go in the ballot. And also, if you'll see on page 1, the 75 words. There are always a lot of discussions about the 75 words. One, for instance, a good example is that $460 million is written as 460,000,000. How come it's not written as 460 and then the word million? Because the answer is that'll cost 2 words, whereas if you write it out like this, then it's 1 word. These resolutions always allow for substitutions, because when this is brought to the county, it could be the case, and I'm sure in Charles's experience, he'd be glad to relate, experiences where they said, no, this is actually 76 words. And well, why is that? Because we count something as 2 words instead of 1. And so they need authority to make changes on the spot. And we have that authority, and in particular, that authority is useful this time because state law is in flux. And so in the event that additional words are required in order to spell out certain financial terms, we have an alternate set of language on page 4 that will be used. And incidentally, and actually I did this with one board member. Oh, really? And the answer is yes. There are numbers in the 75 words on page 4, and those numbers mean that certain words in this page A1 would have to be taken out. But we believe that this page A1 will stand, and so that will be our 75 words. Something else that is really important that we spent a great deal of time on is the tax rate statement. And one of the great things about this team is, yes, they've done this before. and Dave has done this before countless times, and he's developed a structure that allows that this amount per $100,000 of assessed valuation, not value, but assessed valuation, will increase by estimated $39.40. And so that's what the taxpayers will pay. If you have any questions, by the way, and I'm expecting you will, then I'll have Dave come up and work on that. A third incredibly important and element that we had to work on a lot was the issue of, that starts on page A5 with the bond project list. In the course of the working with our Citizens Oversight Committee, one of their jobs is to check and make sure that any project that we do is listed in this bond project list. Back in the day, actually only slightly before 2008, this legislation was passed, Prop 39, in the very early 2000s. And at that time, people believed that you would put exactly what you were going to do in this list. Now it's different. And so this list represents close to $2 billion worth of work if we were to do everything here. And so, but the fact remains, we took great care to ensure that this list would provide flexibility for the bond. Now, something that's related to this, but something that isn't a part of this resolution, is our preliminary bond project list. Because we're not representing, we have to make sure we're not representing the voters. We're going to accomplish everything in the resolutions bond project list, that gigantic list. And so the question arises, so what is it that we think at this time would be a likely list of projects that we would complete? And so that list is provided in this preliminary bond project list, which is the last 2 pages. Is this the final list? That is this something that is going to hold for 10 years? And the answer is, the last list didn't hold for 10 years because needs arose as the years unfolded. A good example of this is that on the Gunn campus, we're building a wellness center. 10 years ago in 2008, if we'd used those 2 words, people would have said, well, what's that? Why would we do something like that? Now, of course, it's common knowledge that we need these kind of facilities on our campuses. But the fact remains, we provided this information. And so with that, it's here for discussion tonight, and we'll be glad to respond to any questions you have. And then it will be, if the board accepts it, it will be provided for action at the next meeting. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Goldston. We have 1 card for public comment, Mr. Horowitz, and then we will take board comments and questions.
Thank you. I support this bond, I want to let you know. But there's always something that's always been bothering me, and I've been involved with other bond issues at Foothill College. And I think you need to tell people exactly what you're going to do. To just put out a laundry list of projects, I think is deceiving the public. And I'll give you an example that they did at Foothill College. They have an administration building there that they were supposed to remodel. And that's what they told the public. But somewhere in the project, they decided to build a new administration building. And if you go on the Foothill campus, you'll see a new administration building there that cost $24 million. They got away with it because they had a laundry list like this, and they felt like they covered everything. I suggest because you're going for $460 million. You tell people exactly what you're going to spend it on. I do not agree with Dr. Colton when he says you can change things around. Yes, you should. You could. But that's not what people want. They want you to be transparent. And therefore, you came up with this $460 million. You have a list right here. This is what you're going to do. You're not going to tell the public, well, we have this laundry list of things, and then we're going to decide where the money is going to go. Because you're asking people to give up their property tax, increase their property tax. Say what you're going to do and do what you say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horowitz. Let's have a round of comments and questions for Dr. Golton and his team. And this is an item for discussion, and then the board will take action on this resolution at our next meeting on the 19th. I think Ms. Godfrey, you're the designated.
Sorry.
3 minutes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Team Bond. One thing I noticed, and maybe I'm just reading it wrong, but in the actual 75 words that are on page 4, it says $39.50. And then the tax rate statement, it says $39.40. So maybe I think it's just a typo. So whatever the number is, it's just what it should be. And I wanted to say that I can empathize with Mr. Horowitz's comments about transparency. And I desire that we are transparent, but I don't think that we can be clairvoyant. And every time we build something, contemplate building something, it comes to the board and we make a decision on behalf of our community that we think fits the need for the students and the schools at that time. And so the $460 million project list is what we know right now, and it's what we expect to happen. What looks like the laundry list does give us options from having experienced bonds in the past, where as you get 6, 7, 8 years down the road, there are things that come up like wellness centers, as you said. So I think we do want to be as transparent as possible. I like the tax rate statements and the detail on what it will cost people and understanding bonds we're paying off from prior iterations and that sort of thing. So I'm obviously supportive of this, being one of the property committee subcommittee members. I've obviously been through this a few times. I just wanted to point out the typo, and if you can figure out how to make us clairvoyant, I would love it. Otherwise, I think we have to stick with what we have. That's it for me.
Mr. Collins?
I serve with Ms. Godfrey on the property committee, and as she mentioned, we have spent a lot of time with the team going through these documents and a number of the backup documents behind them. And I commend the team, including the board members on the team, because I think it has been a thorough and thoughtful job. So thank you very much for all the work. I don't have any additional questions. I'm supportive of the resolution.
Ms. Baden-Caswell?
I also have been talking to Dr. Golton quite a bit about this. Ms. DeBranza and I have had some extended meetings with Dr. Golton, and so I'm in support of this. I think we've really thought through it. I also believe that we need flexibility. We have public meetings where we talk about all these things, including this public meeting right now that has a list of projects and what we think our list is going to be. So I think we are being transparent about this. All of our documents are posted on the web after our meetings. They're all available to the public.
Mr. Branza?
I'm with my colleagues on this. Thank you for the time you've given us to look through the lists and brainstorm and tweak some things. I'm in support of the resolution. I also agree. I appreciate the desire to make sure we avoid it looking like we're going to do all of the things on the laundry list and then we only do a fraction of them. But I also know that when we passed the last bond, if we had committed then to exactly what we were going to do, looking at the projects that we're just doing now at some of our elementary schools, I think priorities change and needs change. And so I do think we need to have the flexibility built in that when the time comes to actually do the project, you want to be able to do the project that the community wants and needs and the students need. I think that's a balance we have to continue to strike. So I support the resolution. Thank you for your work.
So Dr. Galton, just so I understand, when a project is actually scheduled and built, the board, those projects are brought to the board individually and the board votes on those projects. Is that right?
Yes, not only that, and there are as you know, there are a number of meetings where we present conceptual design, schematic design, design development and construction documents, authorization to bid. We have all those presentations, but in addition, we'll be presenting this roadmap, which is what this preliminary project list is right now, and revisions to this roadmap. It won't be as if Project X, oh, gee, here's this pop-up project. No, it'll appear first on this roadmap that'll be presented to the board and approved by the board.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I do think that the provision of a list of needs that is larger than the amount of the bond and the community's confidence that the board is going to make good decisions and that those decisions are going to then be administered well, is an important basis for working this way, and it reflects the history of having done well in the past with this, and I think that's a credit to the team and to previous boards in making good decisions. I think we take it for granted a little bit, but we're proceeding with some degree of confidence that the community will support a $460 million bond based on the polling that we've done and based on the experience that we have. So we're in a very fortunate position, and it really is built on years of having delivered on that. So I think that's important for us to note and to express appreciation for. I don't have any further questions, so we'll take this up at the next board meeting. Thank you.
And we will adjust that 3950 to 3940. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me find our next item.
The next item will be Dr. Golden's as well.
Conceptual approval.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Okay. Let me just find it so that I'm in the right place here. Sorry.
Item
This is
J.
item J.
Item J.
Item J, and I think there have been many meetings leading up to this item as well, Dr. Golden. I think we just want to state that we're excited about the look at the conceptual designs for these multi-purpose buildings for the 3 elementary schools in terms of the flexibility and the environment they can provide to our students and staff. So tonight we'll be seeking approval for the conceptual design with the recommendation for the 7 points as delineated. Dr. Golden?
Yes. This item was actually presented last October. The board had released money that had been contemplated to be used for enrollment growth at the elementary schools. And the question at that time, and the reason why it was held, is that the board wanted information that would be generated by the master plan and this project list to see if this in fact was a priority. And the answer is yes, it is. So we are now proposing that we release that bond money to do multipurpose buildings at El Carmelo and Escondido, and to do at least the design at Walter Hayes. You'll find that on that preliminary project list, we have in fact multipurpose buildings at those other sites.
So how would you like to proceed, Dr. Galton?
Well, this is a slide presentation from October, where we showed the renderings at various sites and where the multipurpose building would be, but I think we've already done it.
Yeah,
so.
I agree with you. I don't think that we need to take us through that. Let's take a quick round if there are questions or comments from board members. Any questions or comments from board members? Okay. This is agendized for action. So there's a recommendation on the first page. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation as set forth in this item?
I move that we approve the conceptual design and scope of the projects for each school as outlined below, the full project budgets for El Carmelo and Escondido Elementary Schools, the project budget for design work for Hayes Elementary School, the appropriation to the reserve fund, the architect agreements with Gelfand Partners for architectural services, the contract for project and construction management services with FS3 Hodges, and authorization to file for CEQA exemptions.
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item is authorization to award the replacement of the clock bell speaker system at Pally. Ms. Hendricks?
Thank you. I think we did discuss this in April. We're looking for authorization to go ahead and contract with Sterling Communications at the amount of about $111,000 with flexibility for a 10% variance in that cost price.
Yes, as Ms. Hendricks said, it was discussed in April, the authorization to bid. So the only question is, what about the bids? And the answer is, well, there were two bidders, but one was not responsive. They were missing certain materials. Sterling came in, well, it was good. We'd estimated that it would be about $120,000, and it came in at that price. And so we do and they've performed a lot of work for the district, and so we recommend that this contract be awarded.
Are there comments or questions from board members? Is there a motion to approve this recommendation?
I move that the board authorize staff to award the contract to Sterling Communications in the amount of $111,399 and authorize the superintendent or designee to execute change orders as necessary in the amount not to exceed 10% or $11,140 for a total award of $122,539.
I'll second that.
Thanks.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is compensation increase for members of the Palo Alto Management Association.
I do not think the speaker is here.
Yeah, I think that's true. Ms. Hendricks?
Thank you. Ms. Brown may wish to add to this, but I just want to start by acknowledging the fact that leadership really matters, and we have a really dynamic and committed leadership team in the district, and we really appreciate what they provide to the students and staff of our district. We're bringing forward tonight this with a request to waive the two-meeting rule. We're seeking to discuss and also approve a one-time raise on the salary schedule for PAMA, retroactive to July 1st of this year, and a one-time 1% off the salary schedule increase as well. The cost of 1% being about $150,000. So recommending we waive the two-meeting rule and discuss and approve. Ms. Brown, would you like to add to that?
So the 1% raise on the salary schedule is ongoing, not one time, and it's the one time off.
Correct.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is a 1% on, 1% off schedule.
1% on, 1% off.
Is there any questions or comments from board members?
I'd just like to say I'm very pleased that we're doing this, and I think this was not my personal opinion, this was not the board's finest work, because we kind of dithered on this item for a very long time, and I think the PAMA members were appropriately, I certainly empathize with their frustration, because I don't think it was clear we weren't clear on what we were trying to do, and we were not moving in the time frame that was relevant for the discussion. So I'm very glad that we were able to resolve that and get to a point where we're making this increase. And I move that we waive the two-meeting rule and pass it at this meeting.
Second that.
Yeah, I just want to say, just to make sure we're clear on this, this is a group that did not get the raise that we authorized for teachers and classified employees.
And confidential supervisory
And
as well.
yeah.
That those employees got a 3% increase. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just making the point, this is not on top of another raise.
Right.
This is,
Right.
the raise,
The
yeah.
increase.
Okay, so there's a motion with a second to waive the two-meeting rule. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So the two-meeting rule is waived. Is there further discussion on this item?
Just want to thank the Management Association for working with us and coming to something that we could pass. And I'm sorry that it took us so long.
Is there a motion to approve this recommendation regarding the compensation increase?
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to, excuse me, item M, which is the bond manager contract. And there's a recommendation on this one as well to waive the two-meeting rule. Ms. Hendricks?
Correct. Ms. Brown, would you like to take us through this one? Dr. Golton's contract is set to expire. And
Okay, Bob, you can stay up there. Don't run away.
Dr. Golton, you can come talk about this. So we again are going to ask to discuss and waive the two-meeting rule in order to approve. Ms. Brown?
At our last board meeting, May 22nd, the board directed us to go back and simplify Dr. Golton's contract and make it similar to that of our new superintendent, Dr. Austin. And so we have done that to the best of our ability and also shared it with legal counsel. And we have this here for you tonight to approve his 2-year contract starting July 1st.
So I'm going to read, excuse me, as required by the Brown Act, the financial terms of the contract. So grab a cup of coffee. The bond manager will receive a base salary at the annual rate of $127,314. In addition to the base salary above, the bond manager shall be entitled to receive a prorated annual stipend of 55% of $2,423 for each master's degree he has obtained, for a maximum of 2 set stipends, and a prorated annual stipend of 55% of $2,423 for a doctorate degree that he has obtained and that we earlier determined that he actually has. Based upon a satisfactory or better performance evaluation, the bond manager shall be granted the same increase to the stipend as granted on the management salary schedule. 3, the bond manager shall receive the same health and welfare benefits and life insurance as provided for other active administrative personnel, with the exception of health insurance. 4, the bond manager shall receive $450 per month as reimbursement for use of his personal vehicle for district business. This allowance may be reviewed annually at the recommendation of the superintendent and approval of the board. The bond manager shall be reimbursed for mileage outside a radius of 50 miles of the district, according to the rate of reimbursement for other administrative personnel. The bond manager shall be reimbursed for all actual expenses incurred in the performance of his duties, including attendance at meetings, conferences, etc., as may be permitted by either board policy or with the prior approval of the superintendent. A per diem rate of $50 per day may be claimed to cover the cost of meals and miscellaneous expenses other than hotels, parking, travel, and tolls for 1 or more days outside the district. And 5, the district shall pay for annual dues or fees for the bond manager's membership in professional associations related to his duties as the parties may mutually agree. Are there any questions or comments before we take action? The first request is to waive the two-meeting rule to enable us to take action. Is there a motion?
I move that we waive the two-meeting rule.
Second.
All in favor of waiving the two-meeting rule?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The two-meeting rule is waived. Is there a motion to approve the employment contract of Dr. Golton as the bond manager?
Oh, wait.
Oh,
Sorry.
Ms. Brown.
Sorry, I can't see you over here.
I can't really see you, sorry.
Stipend is 2,447. You said 2,430 something.
I said 2,423, which is what was reflected in the text here. Should it be 2,447?
Yes.
Okay, so let me,
I think that was we had the wrong stipend.
I'm going to go back and reread that paragraph just so that we're compliant. In addition to the,
Make sure we also have the same version she has.
Right.
No, he's reading from the first page. I see where that mistake
Okay,
is. In
all
the
right,
contract, it has the other.
Contract
It's
is
not that we
correct,
have
okay.
The contract's correct.
We want to read it in bold.
I'm going to read it again.
Okay.
In addition to the base salary above, the bond manager shall be entitled to receive a prorated annual stipend of 55% of $2,447 for each master's degree he has obtained, for a maximum of 2 set stipends, and a prorated annual stipend of 55% of $2,447 for a doctorate degree he has obtained. Based upon a satisfactory or better performance evaluation, the bond manager shall be granted the same increase to the stipend as granted on the management salary schedule. Thanks for catching that. I think there was a motion and second, is that right, on the employment contract?
Oh,
Okay.
no, we haven't done that yet.
Okay,
But I'll move that we accept the employment contract as presented.
Second.
So moved and seconded, all in favor of approving the employment contract of Dr. Golton? Aye. Any opposed? So that is approved. Let us move on then to item N, which is the approval of the Chief Academic Officer contract regarding Ms. Brown. Ms. Hendricks.
Thank you. So I'd like to start by saying we were very fortunate to have Ms. Brown step in this year as the interim Human Resources Assistant Superintendent. I want to acknowledge and thank her for her efforts on that. Thank you, Ms. Brown. With Mrs. Harris leaving, we have an opening in elementary education, and I'm bringing forward a recommendation for appointment for Ms. Brown for a 1-year contract for that position. The terms of the contract are written there for reading out loud as well.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that.
We will be seeking to waive the 2-meeting rule, discuss and approve
Yes.
tonight.
So we'll be seeking, I'm going to read this assuming that we will be waiving the 2-meeting rule. If there's any concern about that, then I won't bother to read it until I don't see any. The financial terms of the contract are the following. The Chief Academic Officer of Elementary Education will receive a base salary at the annual rate of $200,964. In addition to the base salary above, the CAO shall be entitled to receive an annual stipend of $2,447 for each master's degree she has obtained, for a maximum of 2 set stipends, and a stipend of $2,447 for a doctorate degree she has obtained. Based upon a satisfactory or better performance evaluation, the CAO shall be granted the same increase to the stipend as granted on the management salary schedule. 3, the CAO shall receive the same health and welfare benefits and life insurance as provided for other active administrative personnel, with the exception of health insurance. 4, the CAO shall receive $450 per month as reimbursement for the use of a personal vehicle for district business. This allowance may be reviewed annually at the recommendation of the superintendent and approval of the board. The CAO shall be reimbursed for mileage outside a radius of 100 miles of the district according to the rate of reimbursement for other administrative personnel. Is someone setting this to music? The CAO shall be reimbursed for all actual expenses incurred in the performance of her duties, including attendance at meetings, conferences, etc., as may be permitted by either board policy or with the prior approval of the superintendent. A per diem rate of $50 per day may be claimed to cover the cost of meals and miscellaneous expenses other than hotels, parking, travel, and tolls for 1 or more days outside of the district. The district shall pay for annual dues or fees for the CAO's membership in professional associations related to her duties as the parties may mutually agree. Okay, is there a motion first to waive the 2-meeting rule?
So moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded that the 2-meeting rule be waived. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any, so the 2-meeting rule is waived. Any comments or discussion or questions before the board takes action? Ms. Godfrey?
Ms. Brown, you sure you want to do this?
Yes, I very much want to do this.
I move that we approve this contract for Ms. Brown.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the employment contract be approved. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. The employment contract, I mean, there were no no votes. Congratulations, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
The employment contract is approved.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I will say with your knowledge of program, curriculum, personnel in the district and your relationships that you are going to bring a lot to this position, and we welcome you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. The board is obviously very pleased with this change, as you can see from the absence of any comments or questions. Next is item O, which is regarding negotiating proposals submitted by PAEA, and this item is for information only. Ms. Hendricks.
Thank you. We're going to have two items that go hand in hand, O and P. Ms. Brown is going to present them. The first is the sunshine articles from PAEA for negotiations, and the second will be those from Palo Alto Unified School District. Ms. Brown?
Thank you. As you know, the contract between PAEA and PAUSD ends June 30th, 2018. So we are presenting proposals for the successor agreement. The PAEA organization presented their proposal to us April 16th, and their proposal is attached here. We need to list every item, every article in the contract that we wish to reopen in our next successor agreement. And so item O, which you have in front of you, is PAEA's, and this is for information. And I guess we just need you to be informed.
Information only.
Yeah, we.
Yes, it's a good time for us to acknowledge our appreciation for our collaboration and our work with PAEA.
I think she stepped out for a moment.
Could she step out? When she comes back, please let her know we appreciate her and our work with PAEA as well as CSEA. Ms. Steiner.
Okay, are there any questions or comments for Ms. Brown or Ms. Hendricks on this item? Okay, then we will turn to item P, which is the board's initial proposals regarding negotiations. And there's a request here to waive the two-meeting rule and approve these openers. Ms. Hendricks?
Ms. Brown?
Okay. Per the contract, the district needs to present their proposals to PAEA by June 15th. So tonight we are bringing forward for you the articles which we wish to open. This includes Article 2 for term, Article 6, compensation and benefits, Article 7, hours, Article 10, evaluations, Article 11, leave provisions, and Article 13, working conditions.
Okay.
I will add that these are inclusive of any corresponding appendix and/or memorandums of understanding.
Thank you.
Okay, any comments or questions from board members before we proceed on this item? Mr. Collins? No? Okay. Go right ahead.
I move we waive the two-meeting rule.
Second.
All in favor of waiving the two-meeting rule on this item?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The two-meeting rule is waived. Is there a motion then to approve the openers as set forth in this item?
I approve the district openers as set forth in this item.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in,
3 seconds.
That'd be a 6.
so Mr. Collins, I'm going to just arbitrarily, Mr. Collins moved, Ms. Baton-Caswell seconded. And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, let's move on to the next item, which is item Q regarding term limits. Ms. Hendricks.
Thank you. In February, the board approved a motion directing staff to take the steps necessary to place term limits on the November 2018 ballot. Tonight, we're bringing forward a resolution for adoption for next steps.
Dr. Golton, did you have any comments that you wanted to make before you hear from the board?
No.
Okay, so we have a resolution. This is set for discussion this evening and then for action on the 19th. This might have some comments or questions for Dr. Golton. So we can start with Ms. Godfrey.
Sorry. I just want to make sure I'm clear on the sort of the bare bones of it. So it's limit to 2 consecutive terms, anything starting after November of this year. So for someone whose first term was now, that would restart the clock on their number of terms. Is that right?
That's correct, the way this is worded, yes.
Okay. Okay, and that is, I believe, in line with what the city of Palo Alto does. Is that right?
That's also correct.
Okay, great. Those are my questions.
Mr. Collins?
I believe this this appeared to me to be consistent with what had been discussed in several months ago when we first approved this, and I'm prepared to vote for it.
Ms. Bain-Caswell?
And the board approved this, so I'll just leave it at that.
Ms. DeBranza?
I have no comments.
So, Dr. Golton, just to pick up on a point that Ms. Godfrey made, this the resolution does not apply to terms served by board members before December 1st, is that right? So board
Correct.
members would essentially start their next terms, if they are elected to next terms, with those counted as their first terms for the purposes of this, of the term limits, is that right?
That's correct.
Is that a legal requirement? In other words, is there any flexibility in terms of the resolution? Could we write a resolution that would count board members' current service? So for example, that board members who are in their first term would only be able to serve an additional term?
I researched that, and our attorney presented very persuasive arguments that it would be unlikely the court would allow the district to impose term limits. He quoted a case, Wu versus Superior Court 2000. We are guided by the principle that, this is the opinion, we're guided by the principle that the right to hold public office is a fundamental right of citizenship that can be curtailed only if the law clearly so provides. Any ambiguity in a law affecting that right must be resolved in favor of the eligibility to hold office. And so, therefore, he is opining that, again, it's unlikely a court would allow the district to do that.
Okay, I mean, I myself would have preferred that we could impose these term limitations on current members in addition to prospective members, because it seems a little unfair to exempt ourselves, but if we have no choice, then we have no choice. So I appreciate your doing that research. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, so let us move on to the next item. This item will come back for...
I do have a comment.
Oh, sorry, go right ahead.
So just to be clear, you would prefer my term to be over in November?
No, not at all. I would prefer that that I not be able to serve more than an additional term, and that I certainly wouldn't prefer that your term be over in November. I would prefer that none of us could exceed 2 terms, except obviously for you, that you would serve out your 3rd term. In other words, not that you would be that you would be grandfathered in to the extent that you could finish a 3rd term, but that you not be enabled to run for a 4th term, and that none of us be being able to run for 3rd terms. That's what I would prefer, because I think that would be the most. I think that's actually consistent with the intent that we have here, which is to open up these spaces for others to run for them. I myself intend to not run for more than 2 terms, so I will not take advantage of the fact that we're grandfathered in. But I think it just helps the community to have certainty around these limitations. So I in no means meant to suggest that I favor your not finishing your term. That would be completely unreasonable. Let us move then to item number R, which is resolutions regarding child development service contracts. And there's another request that we waive the 2-meeting rule on this one.
Correct. So these resolutions, 2 resolutions, are to be able to bring forward contracts for PAUSD to receive funds in the amount of $640,000 for the next school year, and also to add Dr. Austin on as the signer for these contracts.
Okay, is there any discussion on these items? Is there a motion to waive the two-meeting rule?
Wait, do you mean adding Dr. Austin before he's superintendent? Is that what you mean?
Effective July 1.
Oh, I see, okay, gotcha.
Any discussion? Sorry, did I?
I move that we waive the two-meeting rule.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So the two-meeting rule is waived. Is there any discussion before we have a motion to approve these contracts and resolutions? Okay, is there a motion?
I move that we approve these contracts and resolution.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So that item is passed. Next is item S regarding teacher housing. That one we have removed from this agenda. That brings us to item M, I think it was, on the consent agenda, which was pulled from the consent agenda at the request of our member of the public, Ms. Jordan, Kathy Jordan. I think that she is not here, actually, to speak to that item. So, but we still obviously have to take action on it. This is regarding legal services, and it's about increasing budget allocations and entering into contracts for 2018-19. Is there any discussion on this item before we take action?
I would just say that the amount is so big that I think it was good practice for us to sunshine this. And I am looking forward to discussions going forward on how we can control our legal spending.
Can I add a comment?
Of course.
I think some of us have thought for a long time that hiring a general counsel might help us control those legal costs. And I believe you had stated that we listed that. That's open. That's an open.
So did the board approve that position?
No, I don't think so.
Not this year.
Not the three on this end.
So I think we have to have a formal approval before we.
Really awkward to bring them in here and us not approve their contract.
Yeah, so we probably need to agendize a discussion on this, assuming that that's what we're doing.
Is the general counsel included in the budget?
No, we recalled direction to open up a pool to see, you know, what we could gather in terms of qualified candidates. We have not moved forward to interview. I think it would be good to discuss this at the budget study session on Thursday.
Great.
Topic
Yeah,
of conversation.
makes sense.
May I comment?
Yeah.
Two things. One is I'm very supportive of what you did opening the pool, and I do think we learn, this is an unusual position, and unlike almost all the others we hire, in which it is not so much a seasonal hire. It's not tied to the academic year like most of our others. And so opening it to, for a long period of time to see, tossing the net out and seeing what fish happen to swim in, I think will help inform us about what's available and, you know, how to think about a position that we have not had in the past and is unusual for districts of our size. In addition, Ms. Mack, I'm sure you recall, perhaps my colleagues as well, we had expanded the budget allocation for legal services earlier in the fiscal year as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you remember? I don't recall how much it was for. Do you remember?
Right, so prior to this budget request, the total legal budget for this year was at 1.9 million, but about half of that is one-time expenses to do investigation, Title IX investigations.
Sorry, just to clarify my question, do you recall how much we expanded the budget the last time we amended it for this item? It was several $100,000, right?
I don't remember what the increase is, but the total budget was at 1.9 million before this increase.
My general recollection, I don't know if any of my colleagues remember, I think it was several $100,000. And I recall saying at the time that it's never good to have to expand your budget during the year by that magnitude, especially a budget that's already very large, and to make sure that whatever we were asking for, and this applies to you too, I guess, Ms. Hendricks, that whatever we were asking for, to make sure that it was enough, so that we would not have to come back again for more. And I believe, I didn't go back and check the record, but I think I received assurances that, in fact, don't worry, this will be enough. We will not come back for more. So I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because, well, I'm sure that that Ms. Hendricks and the team of people who use these lawyers did everything possible to try to efficiently use them and to mitigate the costs. You know, our budget, our legal budget is embarrassing. The fact that we've expanded it twice during the course of the year is embarrassing. I think it signals to the community that we don't have our operations under the level of control that we should have them under control. And I think it's a negative mark against us that we are having to do this. So I guess I asked Ms. Mack, what would happen if we did not increase the budget allocation as requested?
Then we have bills that we cannot pay.
So we've already used the services, is what you're saying.
So let me just understand, because I guess I want to make sure I understand our financial controls as well. So if we've already used services for which no purchase order is authorized, how do we do that? Is that, I mean, normally our financial controls are supposed to prevent that.
So unfortunately, with legal expense, it's based on need, right? So when we have unforeseen need, you know, we need to seek legal advice on a timely basis. That's how these things happen.
But shouldn't we, in fact, have recognized that we were getting close to the purchase order limit? And before the services were requested and rendered, come to the board and ask to expand, so that if the board said no, that we were able to stop using the services or take other steps to reduce our cost? I mean, it seems like this is I'm gonna be honest, this seems like a failure of financial control. We have committed and used services above the authorized purchase order level. That's, unless I misunderstand, that is not supposed to happen. Am I incorrect? I mean, educate me if I am.
I don't think you're incorrect. I think it's a point well taken. I think it's, you know, a process that we're working on to try to understand how to plan for and prepare for monthly legal costs that can be unanticipated. So I don't think you're incorrect, and I think that that's what's reflected here.
Yeah, let me just be clear. I don't think it's bad faith. I don't think anybody was trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes or, you know, make an end run around financial controls. But, you know, I think when you're a district that has resources, it's easy to spend them. And it's not all there. When there's no money in the bank, you can't spend money you don't have. So most districts, I think, don't have this problem. They're like, oh my God, I can't spend more of the budget because otherwise the checks will bounce. We don't have that particular problem, but I don't think that means that we should be lax about having the level of financial control that the community expects us to have and that the board expects us to have. So well, I understand this is an extraordinary situation. We used, you know, more lawyers than I hope we ever use again on a number of issues that I know the board was supportive of, I was supportive of, but I think from a process point of view, we fell down. And we should never, ever be in a situation where we are requesting budget allocations for items that if the answer from the board is no, then we will be in default on bills for services already rendered. I don't think that should ever happen.
You know, I'll counter that just a little bit by saying that it actually does not feel easy for us to make these expenditures. So I don't want that perception to exist. I think we have worked extremely hard to try to narrow the scope of legal consultant services, and in many cases taken on some of the work ourselves, you know, due to the staffing that we've been able to recruit. So I know through special education and also through our Title IX office that, you know, we've worked extremely hard and been diligent related to trying to narrow scope and expenditures of legal counsel.
So I think it would be good for us to let people know what what of these expenditures are the OCR related, because, hopefully that's not an ongoing expense. But I do think we should, because we told the community an amount for that. And I do think we're significantly over that amount, but at least we need to sunshine and make sure that we're clear about what's ongoing expense and what are related to that.
Related to the OCR and Section E, the resolution agreement in particular?
Yes.
Correct. We can do that.
I just want to, I agree. Thank you for pointing out. I definitely did not mean to imply that you were cavalierly spending money on this and there was no effort to manage it. I know you personally were very heavily involved in managing lawyers, and lawyers are there any lawyers here? I don't think so. Lawyers are really hard to manage and very good at billing. But it's more the financial control issue, and we should have been ahead of this, and coming and asking for an expansion the second time in a year in arrears is just, that's not what should happen. That's the part I'm most concerned about.
Right, makes sense. Thank you.
I think it's very connected to the general counsel, the question of who's making decisions of what legal services we're getting. Obviously, a lot of them are LRR, which I believe is largely doing special ed work that needs to happen. So I think it sort of all ties together in this conversation about what is the best way to get all of the legal services that we need to get and the most cost-effective way, and who at the district has oversight of approving those expenses and those billable hours and whatnot.
And we've kept a tight filter on that through the cabinet level. I think one of the things that's challenging when we talk about general counsel or specific to special education is to try to be predictive about cost savings, which I know is a request. So I think it'll be a good conversation point.
So I know that somebody said they wanted to talk about general counsel at the finance meeting or the budget meeting. But I do think Dr. Austin should be part of our conversation on this because it's about our going forward. So let's think about how we make that happen.
Absolutely, and we've had some initial conversations.
So, I mean, if asking staff to make a prediction of budget savings is too hard of a road to, or a hill to climb in order to hire this, and I suggest that we think about other ways to be creative about this, like contracting with a temporary general counsel for, a year to see if we do get cost savings. I think that, I think Mr. Burns is right, and I think Mr. Collins mentioned this too. Lawyers are hard to manage. There's a lot of kind of information asymmetry, and so I completely agree with the issue that Mr. Collins is raising about financial controls, but we have really been talking about this general counsel for almost the entire time I've been on the board, and it shouldn't be that difficult for us to take that step. I think maybe we're asking for more assurance that it's going to be free or cost saving than we actually can have up front, and that's getting in our way, and we're spending money that we don't need to spend potentially in order to get that. So I think that's probably the wrong cost-benefit analysis on this. So I think we should go ahead and see, what happens, and then, then we can take action.
I'll doubtlessly be proven wrong, but I doubt it could be much worse than where we are today.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for actually moving forward on this. Let's discuss this, and if Dr. Austin has a thought or an objection that he wants to pass on to Ms. Hendricks, I encourage him to do that so that we can take that into account when we discuss this on Thursday. Okay, what is being asked here is a vote. Is there a motion to approve these recommendations?
Can I make a request before we make a motion? Could we separate the budget allocations from the entering of contracts?
You can. Why don't you make a motion to do
I
that?
move that we, well, I'm going to vote against my own motion, but I move that we increase the budget allocation for AALRR and Cozen O'Connor by the stated amounts.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
So that motion passes by a vote of 4-1 with Mr. Collins dissenting. Is there a motion on the third item then regarding the contracts for next year?
I move we enter into the legal service contracts for Lozano Smith, AALRR, and DWK for the stated amounts.
Second.
Can I ask a question about this? About next year's prediction? Maybe Ms. Mack or Ms. Hendricks could answer that. I know that the closing costs this year were much higher than we had anticipated, and they're not anticipated for next year. So I'm just wondering why we're still up $300,000 or more than that from the year before, or I guess it's 225. What is it that we're expecting for that extra money, or why we need that?
So if you look at the different firms, you can see an increase in allocation to Atkinson. So this year's projection is, for Atkinson, is 864,000. And next year, I'm projecting 900,000, which is close to this year's estimate. Again, to avoid the situation that we were in, that we had to come back and ask for more.
Okay.
And I have a question too. What is the $25,000 for Lozano Smith? Is that?
To finish up on the open cases.
Okay. Okay, is there, did we have a motion?
I just wanted to add, and also note that DWK has 100K for Measure A, which is the bond. So there's an additional 100K that was is
okay.
new and unique to next year.
One time, okay. Hopefully, one time.
I'm sorry, I've lost track of whether there's a motion.
There is, and there's a second.
Okay. So moved and seconded to approve the legal contracts for next year. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So those contracts are approved. That concludes, I think, our action agenda. We have 10 minutes left until 10:30. If we think we can do board operations, then let's try to do that without extending the meeting. Ms. Godfrey?
Best part of the job, high school graduations. Those were very fun. Again, it was fun. I also did JLS, and I went to Walter Hayes, so 3 graduations in 2 days, refilled my bucket. That's it.
Mr. Collins?
Congratulations were excellent. I would like to, I don't know what the plan is for the board retreat scheduling, but it would be great to get it on the calendar.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Dr. Austin about that today because I'd like, obviously, for the board to be able to do that with him. And so after, I would say as soon after the 1st of July as is reasonable. What would probably be the most helpful is if board members can forward to Vicki your travel schedules and so forth for the balance of the summer. And then we can work on scheduling a time for the retreat. That's really the variable here. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you. I will do that. I would like us to agendize a follow-on item relating to handling of PRA requests. We had a discussion now several months ago. Was it in January?
It was at the January board retreat.
Yeah, and at the January board retreat about handling the copious level of, overwhelming level of PRA requests. And there was discussion at that meeting about how to proceed, and I know Ms. Hendricks and her team did some research afterwards, but I don't believe that has ever come back to the board, and I don't recall any discussion on it. And I'm, as far as I can tell, there hasn't been any change in our process or how we handle those things. And I feel like we're in, I would very much like to see that discussed again and see if we can, the board can decide whether to change our process. So I would love to see that agendized as soon as possible.
Okay. I personally think that makes sense, so we'll take that up with the agenda setting committee.
Thank you. And lastly, I don't know what the plans are. I'm the rookie board member, but I would very much like to host a dinner for the board and the senior staff, whoever is appropriate to join, sometime between now and the end of June. So I don't know what people's availability is, but I wanted to, and I don't know what our protocol is for this, but not having received any invitations, I'd like to extend one, and we can figure out how to organize it.
That's great, thank you. I suggest that you maybe work through Vicky on that as well for scheduling, and Ms. Hendricks.
Sure.
That's very generous, thank you. Ms. Baton-Caswell?
Well, so I was at Briones for a very fun graduation. I have to say, I didn't realize I know that we have so many languages in this district, but Icelandic, I haven't heard Icelandic before. They had each kid, many of the schools do this, but they had each language that was spoken at home, a greeting in each language, and Icelandic was the first time I'd heard that. I also enjoyed the gun graduation despite the bitter cold, and the term graduation was very lovely as well. I had said earlier that I was hoping we could have a conversation about our discipline practices. So if we could figure out how to agendize that, that would be great.
Okay, we'll take that up with the Agenda Setting Committee as well. Mr. Brienza?
Putting in agenda setting topics. Graduations were fun. I got to hug Richie at the Pally graduation. It was cold. Then Terman was a lot warmer. And I got to go to Ohlone and see my daughter graduate, which was awesome. So it was a great week. The only other thing I have now is that she is not still here, but our Director of Professional Development, Kelly Bickle, what's her title? Director of PD. She was published. She just published a piece, sole author in the Learning Professional, which is the publication, the journal for Learning Forward, which is a very well-respected organization. And it is about work that has happened here in our district. And it's an amazing piece. And so we really are so lucky to have Dr. Bickle here in our district with us and doing the work that she is leading and everyone is working together with. I think we had over 100 secondary teachers today, was it today, at the professional development today. I mean, there's just really good professional development work going on by some quite talented and skilled professional developers. And I just wanted to note that and congratulate her on this really, really strong piece. That's it.
I enjoyed the Pally graduation, and
Which was cold.
it was cold, but the speeches from the students were really
So good.
really extraordinary, and I think another testament. We often see students here speaking, and when they do, we really get a sense of how well we are preparing them. And I also enjoyed the Jordan graduation. And we will see you on Thursday morning.
36 hours, not even.
This meeting is adjourned.